You've been misled about what it takes to sleep deeply and wake up happy. They told you it's about the perfect mattress, the right supplements, the ideal routine. But if that were true, why do so many people lie in bed every night staring at the ceiling, thoughts racing, peace nowhere in sight? Why do even the most successful, well-rested-looking people still feel tired on the inside? The truth is, peaceful sleep doesn't start with silence around you. It starts with silence within. And happiness doesn't come from perfect circumstances. It comes from a mind trained to let go, to breathe, to live fully in the now. Buddhist wisdom has held this secret for centuries, not as a theory, but as a lived practice, a way to quiet the noise, to release the craving, to feel free, not tomorrow, not one day, but tonight, right now. Tonight, as you hear these teachings, something will shift. The thoughts that usually won't stop, they'll begin to slow. The anxiety that usually builds, it will start to melt. And the tension in your chest you've been carrying for days, it'll feel lighter, softer, easier to let go. This isn't just another nighttime listen. It's a reset for your mind, a doorway into the kind of rest that heals more than your body. It heals your spirit. Are you ready to fall asleep lighter, to wake up truly alive? Let's begin. And now, as your breath starts to slow and your thoughts begin to soften, we step into the first lesson, the one hidden in plain sight, yet often ignored. It's not the world outside that steals your rest. It's something quieter, deeper, more personal, something that keeps whispering even after the lights are out. What if the very thing keeping you awake is the part of your mind that refuses to let go? There is a reason why sleep feels difficult even when everything seems fine. The room is dark. The noise is gone. But inside, the mind clings. It clings to what was said earlier today. It clings to what might happen tomorrow. It clings to who it thinks you are, what it believes must be done, and how things should be. This clinging doesn't shout. It murmurs. It builds tension under the surface. And that tension is what tightens your chest when the world gets quiet. That's what makes your eyelids heavy, but your thoughts heavier. Buddhism teaches that the root of suffering is attachment. Not just attachment to people or possessions, but to ideas, identities, timelines, and expectations. These are the silent thieves of peace, and while it's easy to spot clinging in the middle of a chaotic day, it becomes slippery at night, more subtle, more intimate, because when the body tries to sleep, the mind doesn't always agree. The body wants stillness, the mind wants control. It replays conversations, rewrites outcomes, and rehearses problems. This happens not because the mind is cruel, but because it's scared. Fear is the seed of clinging, the fear of not being enough, the fear of being forgotten, the fear of losing something important. These fears give birth to thoughts that feel urgent, thoughts that refuse to rest. But here's the truth. No solution ever comes from clinging, not in life, not in sleep. Let's go deeper. What is clinging, really? It's the refusal to accept what is. The refusal to allow things to be unresolved, unfinished, imperfect. The subconscious mind, built over years of survival instincts, holds tightly to anything that feels incomplete. And right before sleep, it starts its night shift. It searches for danger. It scans for mistakes. It reopens wounds, because part of the mind still believes it must protect you, that if it lets go, something terrible will happen. But sleep is the opposite of protection. It's vulnerability, it's surrender, it requires trust. That's why it's so hard to rest when you're still mentally gripping onto the need to fix things, to be understood, to prove something, even gripping to the belief that you should be asleep by now. Think about the role you play all day. You're someone's child, someone's partner, a worker, a leader, a dreamer, a caretaker, a survivor. These roles come with expectations, and the mind clings to them because they provide a sense of identity. But as the body lies in bed, those roles no longer serve. Yet the mind doesn't know how to put them down. It keeps wearing the mask, even in the dark. That's why Buddhist teachings speak about the illusion of the self, not to confuse you, but to free you. The person you believe you are is often a story held together by thoughts and memories. And that story gets louder when the world gets quiet. If you've ever laid awake wondering why you're so tired but can't sleep, this is why. The story doesn't rest. It edits itself at 2 a.m., questions its meaning at 3, and compares itself to others by 4. It's not just sleeplessness, it's identification. The more tightly you grip your story, the harder it is to fall asleep. So what can be done? Buddhism doesn't ask you to fight the thoughts. It doesn't tell you to conquer them or drown them out with distractions. It invites you to notice them, not as facts, but as passing clouds. To see your mind clinging and gently say, "It's okay to let go now." It invites you to breathe into the moment, not to escape the noise, but to soften your grip on it. There is no secret formula here, just presence, just awareness. When the mind clings to a regret, you acknowledge the regret, not with judgment, but with curiosity. When it clings to a future outcome, you acknowledge the craving for control. When it clings to an identity, you remind yourself that who you are is more spacious than any role, any label. And yes, this sounds simple, but it's not easy, especially in a world that teaches you to hold on, to always want more, to never stop chasing. But the path to peaceful sleep, the kind that heals, the kind that restores, doesn't start with doing more. It starts with releasing the need to become more. There is a beautiful Buddhist teaching that says, "Let go or be dragged." That is the choice every night. Hold on and be dragged through mental loops, or let go and fall gently into sleep. And letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means trusting that everything unresolved will be okay without your constant effort. That your worth is not found in fixing every mistake. That your future doesn't need to be figured out before sunrise. It means knowing that peace isn't found in answers. It's found in surrender. Think of how the body works. When you cut your hand, you don't have to tell it to heal. It knows. The same is true for rest. Your body already knows how to sleep. It's your mind that forgets how to let it happen. Every time the mind says, "We must solve this," sleep slips further away. Every time it says, "Just one more thought," the night gets longer. So what if, tonight, you chose to do nothing? What if you let the thoughts be, without giving them power? What if you stopped gripping, just for a moment, and noticed how the body softens when the mind steps aside? This is not about controlling sleep. It's about releasing control. It's about remembering that peace is not something you force. It's something you allow. Buddhist monks train for years to master the art of letting go. But the truth is, it starts with the smallest gesture, the willingness to pause, to feel the grip, and to release it, not with force, but with kindness. Letting go is not a one-time event. It's a nightly practice, a moment-by-moment invitation to choose presence over pressure, to choose breath over thought, to choose softness over striving. If you find yourself clinging again, and you will, don't panic. That's part of the path. Awareness is the key. Each time you notice the grip, that's a victory. Each time you return to the breath, that's progress. The point is not to have a perfect night, it's to build a peaceful relationship with imperfection. And this practice doesn't just help you sleep better, it changes how you live. Because the same clinging that keeps you awake at night is the same clinging that causes stress during the day. The fear of missing out, the pressure to perform, the need to prove, to protect, to possess. When you learn to loosen the grip at night, you begin to loosen it during the day. Life gets lighter, and happiness stops being a finish line. It becomes a way of walking. So tonight, let the body rest and the mind unlearn. Let the story pause. Let the judgment dissolve. Let the questions be unanswered. You are not your roles. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness underneath. Gentle, quiet, free. This is the mind that no longer clings. This is the peace that sleep has been waiting for. Let it come. Let it carry you. Let it teach you that the deepest rest comes not from effort, but from release. And if you forget tomorrow, that's okay. You'll remember again the next night, because now you've begun the practice. Now your mind knows the way home. And so the mind begins to soften. The grip loosens, the thoughts grow quieter, and in this gentle quiet, a new doorway appears. Not a place to escape to, but a place to return. A place you've never truly left, yet so often forget. This moment. Not yesterday, not tomorrow, just here, just now. There is something profoundly overlooked in most conversations about sleep. Everyone talks about what to avoid: screens, caffeine, stress, but very few speak about what to return to. Buddhism doesn't just ask for stillness, it teaches how to find it, not by running from the noise, but by becoming intimate with this breath, this body, this moment, especially when it matters most. Not during a retreat, not at a perfect meditation center, but right now, before sleep. Because this is where the nervous system remembers how to relax, not when you try to shut it off like a switch, but when you meet it with full attention, the kind of attention that holds no demand, no judgment, no goal, just presence. Most people live in the past or the future. Even in bed, the thoughts lean forward. They rehearse plans, predict outcomes, relive conversations. The body lies down, but the mind leans out of the moment, like it's looking for something better, something safer. This habit is so old, it feels normal. But the cost is enormous. The body wants to rest, the mind wants to prepare. And in that tug-of-war, sleep slips away. This is why Buddhist practice turns the spotlight inward, not just on the thoughts, but on the sensations, on the breath, On the body, because while the mind is easily distracted, the body never leaves the moment. It's always here, and when you train your attention to come back to the body teaches the mind how to stay. This is not a quick fix. It's a retraining, a rewiring of habit. It's about choosing presence again and again, especially in the subtle hours when the mind wants to drift. The breath becomes your anchor, not something to control or manipulate, but something to feel. You notice its rhythm, its movement, its weight. You let it show you that right now, everything is okay. Not perfect, not solved, but safe, held, real. When you train the nervous system to stay in the present moment, something magical happens. The body stops fighting, the chest opens, the muscles relax, and the thoughts that usually swirl like storms start to lose their charge. Not because they disappeared, but because they lost your attention. And this is the key. Not suppression, not resistance, but redirection. A gentle, steady redirection toward what is real. The breath is real. The weight of the body against the bed is real. The coolness of the air, the rise and fall of the chest. These are not small details. They are doorways. They are the way back. In Buddhist practice, this is known as mindfulness, not just during meditation, but in every ordinary moment, especially the ones before sleep. These are the moments that shape the quality of rest more than any supplement or habit ever could, because when the mind is here, the body feels safe enough to let go. And this isn't about doing mindfulness perfectly. It's not about silence or stillness. It's about contact. Contact with this moment, however it is, even if thoughts still come, even if emotions are present. Mindfulness doesn't mean pushing them away. It means staying with yourself, even in the discomfort. It means breathing through the tightness instead of trying to fix it. There is a wisdom that grows from this practice, the kind of wisdom that can't be taught, only experienced. The wisdom that knows, right now is enough. That sees how every craving, every regret, every worry is just a ripple on the surface. And that underneath all of it, there is peace. Not because the world is perfect, but because attention is whole. This isn't just about better sleep, it's about freedom. The freedom to not be pulled by every anxious thought. The freedom to not be defined by the regrets of the day. The freedom to drop out of the storyline and rest in what is here. The texture of the sheets, the quiet hum of the room, the beat of the heart. This awareness becomes your home, and over time, the nervous system starts to trust that it doesn't need to prepare for a danger that isn't here. It doesn't need to keep reprocessing the day, because the present moment is not asking anything from it. It's not demanding a reaction, it's just offering space. And in that space, healing happens. Hormones shift, muscles release. The body enters a state of repair, because finally, there's nothing to fight. No timeline to race toward, no identity to uphold, just breath, just presence, just peace. Many people try to fix their sleep by adding more rules, more routines, more hacks. But the Buddhist path invites subtraction. Not more effort, but less resistance. Not more stimulation, but more stillness. Not more knowledge, but more awareness. Each time your attention drifts, you guide it back. Not harshly, not with frustration, but like you'd guide a child back to safety, with warmth, with patience, with love. That's the practice, over and over again, and eventually the body learns that the present moment is safe, that it doesn't have to prepare for tomorrow to be okay tonight, that the breath will continue even if the mind lets go, that sleep isn't a reward for solving life, it's a gift we receive when we stop chasing. When you fall asleep in the present moment, something changes. You stop being a problem to fix. You become a being in peace. The labels fall away. The pressure dissolves. And in its place, quiet presence, still awareness, gentle rest. And yes, there will be nights when the thoughts feel too loud, when the body feels restless, when the mind wants to wander. That's okay. Return anyway, not to perfect silence, but to imperfect presence. The practice isn't about controlling the moment. It's about meeting it, even when it's messy, even when it's loud, even when it hurts. Because every moment you stay, the nervous system learns. Every time you return, the grip of the future loosens, and eventually, rest doesn't feel like something you earn. It feels like something that was always here, waiting for you to come home. The most peaceful people aren't the ones with the quietest lives. They're the ones with the clearest presence. The ones who don't run from the moment, but into it. Who rest not because everything is done, but because everything is enough. Tonight, let this moment be enough. Let this breath be your home. Let the present moment hold you as you fall not just into sleep, but into peace. There is nowhere else to be, nothing else to fix, just this. And this is enough. And once presence becomes familiar, once the breath becomes your resting place and the body no longer fights the moment, a deeper truth starts to rise to the surface. Sleep doesn't begin at night. It begins during the day. The seeds of rest are planted in how the day is lived. What the mind carries into the darkness is rarely random. It is shaped by intention. It is shaped by karma. Karma is often misunderstood. Many believe it's some mysterious cosmic punishment system like a scoreboard in the sky. But in Buddhism, karma simply means action. More specifically, intentional action. What's said, what's done, even what's thought. Every moment of intention is a cause, and every cause has an effect. The thoughts that spin at night, the restlessness that won't settle, the unease in the chest. These are not random visitors. They are echoes of the day. The unconscious reactions, the rushed judgments, the suppressed feelings, the words spoken too sharply, the ones not spoken at all. These things don't just disappear when the sun goes down. They settle in the body. They wait in the nervous system. They knock on the door just as sleep starts to arrive. This is where real peace begins, not in silence, not in darkness, but in clarity. Clarity of intention, clarity of heart. When you move through the day aligned with kindness, integrity, and presence, the night becomes a refuge. But when the day is filled with resistance, reactivity, or misalignment, the mind stays busy long after the body wants to rest. Unresolved emotion doesn't vanish. It gets stored, not in a visible place, but in subtle places, in the background hum of thoughts, in the tightness of the jaw, in the quick beat of the heart when the room gets quiet. Most people don't realize they're bringing the entire emotional weight of their day into bed with them. But the body knows. It remembers. That's why Buddhist practice places such deep emphasis on right action, right speech, and right thought. These aren't just moral teachings. They are practical teachings for peace. When your actions are clean, your heart is light. When your heart is light, your mind can let go. And when the mind lets go, sleep becomes natural. Right intention is the compass. It doesn't mean perfection. It means moving through the day with awareness of your impact. It means noticing the tone behind your words, the motives behind your actions. It means pausing before reacting and choosing the path that brings less harm, not just to others, but to yourself. Because every moment of anger, every lie, every small act of harm is not just an external ripple. It becomes internal noise. It disturbs the mind. It distorts your peace. And while it might go unnoticed in the rush of the day, it reveals itself in the quiet of the night. There's a reason why monks reflect each evening on their day's actions. It's not to judge themselves, it's to bring awareness, to clean the inner slate, to acknowledge mistakes, to rejoice in kindness, and to let go. This practice is not just for monks, it's for anyone who wants to sleep with a clear heart. Think about how you treat others. Did you speak with care? Did you listen fully? Did you act with honesty, even when it was difficult? These things matter, not because you need to be perfect, but because they shape how you feel when you're finally alone with yourself. And sleep is the ultimate confrontation with the self. If the mind is filled with guilt, resentment, or avoidance, it won't rest just because the lights are off. It will churn, it will replay, it will seek resolution that was never given. That is karma in motion, not punishment, but momentum. And momentum is hard to stop once it's been built. This is why ethics in Buddhism are not strict rules. They are tools. Tools for inner clarity. Tools for preventing the mental clutter that builds throughout the day. Tools that protect not just others, but your own peace. And it's not just about big actions. It's about the subtle ones. The tiny moments of jealousy, comparison, or self-criticism. These are seeds too, and if they're planted often, they grow roots. Roots that tangle in your nervous system, that whisper at night, that keep the heart slightly guarded. But the good news is this: just as karma is created, it can also be cleared through awareness, through forgiveness, through intention, even now, even in this moment, before sleep. Begin by asking yourself, what am I still carrying from today? What regret, what tension, what unfinished feeling is still echoing inside me? Not to analyze it, just to see it, to hold it gently. Awareness is the first step of purification. Then ask, what can I let go of? Not because it didn't matter, but because it no longer serves. This is how karma softens, not through punishment, through compassion. And this is where ethical clarity comes in. When you live in alignment with what feels true and kind, the mind has less to argue with at night. There's less to defend, less to hide from, less noise. That space is where rest can grow. But when the day is filled with avoidance, the night becomes a reckoning. The thoughts return. The heart feels heavy. The mind becomes restless, not out of malice, but out of longing for resolution, for relief, for peace. So ask yourself before sleep, what needs closure? What apology wasn't made? What truth wasn't spoken? What feeling was denied? These are the threads that tangle in your dreams. These are the weights the body carries into rest. Buddhism doesn't ask you to be without flaw. It asks you to be awake, awake to your choices, awake to your patterns, awake to the ripple effect of your presence in the world. That awareness, even if it's just beginning, changes everything. And here's something beautiful. Every day is a chance to rewrite that karma, not to erase the past, but to stop repeating it, to choose clarity over chaos, truth over comfort, kindness over pride. And as you do, night begins to feel different, not as an escape, not as a collapse, but as a return to self, a return to ease, a return to a heart that is not carrying more than it needs to. This is not philosophy, it is practical wisdom. It is what turns restlessness into stillness, what turns sleep from a struggle into a gift. It is what makes peace feel earned, not through effort, but through integrity. Each small act of honesty during the day removes a thorn from your mind at night. Each moment of compassion makes the pillow feel softer. Each time you choose presence over reaction, you build a bed not just of comfort, but of clarity. This is the karma of the day, and it decides the rest of the night, not as punishment, not as reward, but as reflection. You don't need to fix every past mistake tonight, but you can plant new seeds now, seeds of presence, of forgiveness, of care. You can review your day not with shame, but with wisdom. You can say, "This I will keep, this I will change, this I will release." And when you do that, the nervous system sighs, the heart lets go, the breath deepens, because the weight of the day is no longer lingering. It has been seen, it has been held, and now it can be put down. This is how peace is built, not at the end of the journey, but moment by moment, breath by breath, until even sleep becomes a practice in freedom, until the night becomes not a place of escape, but a place of peace, until your rest feels like a reflection of the life you're creating, one of intention, one of presence, one of clarity. So, tonight, let go of what's unresolved. Trust that awareness is enough. Trust that clarity will come. And trust that as your karma shifts, so will your rest. Because nothing sleeps more peacefully than a heart at ease. And now, with the weight of the day softened by awareness, with the heart clearer and the nervous system quieter, there is space for something deeper. Beneath the surface of restlessness, beyond the noise of the mind, there lives a fear that touches everyone. Not fear of the dark, not fear of the unknown, but the quiet fear of losing control. The fear of letting go completely. This fear doesn't just shape the way people live, it shapes the way they sleep. And that fear is exactly what this next practice meets head-on. Sleep is more than a break from the day. In the eyes of Buddhist wisdom, it is a micro-death, a small surrender into the unknown. Each night, consciousness fades, identity pauses, control slips away. What remains is stillness, emptiness, space. But because so many resist that surrender, Sleep feels like a fight instead of a release. The truth is, the same part of the mind that fears death is the part that fights sleep. And it's not just fear of ending, it's fear of disappearing, fear of not being in charge, fear of not knowing what comes next. That's why this teaching is not about sleep hygiene. It's about a profound internal shift. It invites the mind to see rest not as an inconvenience or a task, but as sacred practice. It is a rehearsal for the biggest letting go any of us will ever experience. Not in a morbid way, not in a frightening way, but in a freeing way. When this shift happens, sleep no longer feels like a loss of awareness. It becomes a return to peace. Buddhism teaches that clinging is what causes suffering, and the deepest clinging is the clinging to self. The idea that there is a solid I who must always be awake, always be doing, always be planning. That part doesn't know how to rest. It doesn't know how to surrender. But when the illusion of self starts to thin, so does the fear of stillness. The mind no longer sees sleep as a threat. It sees it as a release. The release of tension, the release of role, the release of being the one in charge. And that release is a skill. It must be trained. It doesn't happen just because the clock says it's time for bed. It happens when the mind is willing to let the moment carry it, when the breath is enough, when the thoughts are allowed to fade without chasing them, when the idea of me is no longer clinging to stay alive in the story. This is why in some Buddhist traditions, monks are encouraged to meditate on death, not to fear it, but to become intimate with it, to dissolve the walls around it. Because the moment that death is no longer feared is the moment that rest becomes effortless. It is no longer something to resist. It is something to trust. Every night, the ego is asked to step aside, and every night it resists. It says, "Let me solve one more thing. Let me worry about this. Let me prove I'm still in control." That's why the thoughts keep spinning, even when the body is ready, because surrender has not yet arrived. But what if that surrender wasn't weakness? What if it was wisdom? What if letting go wasn't the end of awareness, but the beginning of a deeper awareness? The kind that lives beneath the noise, the kind that doesn't need to hold on to feel safe. That's what this practice leads to. The calm confidence that letting go is not falling, it's floating. And there's no need to wait for sleep to begin practicing. It starts now, right here in the middle of your breath. You let go of the idea that you need to be in charge. You let go of the pressure to know what comes next. You let go of the need to fix anything in this moment. And what rises in that space is not fear, it's openness, curiosity, peace. This is what makes Buddhist sleep practice different. It does not give the mind more tools to control rest. It gives the mind permission to not control anything at all. It teaches that surrender is not a failure. It is a higher form of wisdom. And yes, this takes practice. At first, the mind will rebel. It will say, "If I don't think about this, who will?" It will resist the idea that rest can happen without its permission. But over time, the body teaches the mind. The body says, "You don't need to hold this. You don't need to carry this. You are safe." And this becomes the new rhythm. The letting go doesn't happen all at once. It happens in layers. First, letting go of thought, then letting go of control, then letting go of identity, until what's left is the pure awareness that doesn't need to do anything at all. That is sleep, not unconsciousness, but full release. And when this becomes familiar, something incredible begins to unfold. Even daytime stress softens, because the same skill used at night becomes available during the day. You learn to pause, to release, to not fight what's unfolding. Life becomes less about gripping and more about flowing. In this practice, the body is not the enemy of sleep. It is the teacher. Every time the shoulders drop, every time the breath slows, every time the eyes close gently instead of tightly, these are signs that letting go is working, that surrender is being remembered, that you are becoming fluent in the language of rest. And it's okay if some nights feel harder. That's not failure. That's part of the lesson. Sometimes letting go is smooth. Other times it feels like peeling off layers of fear and control. Both are valid. Both are practice. The point is not perfection. The point is presence. To see sleep as a form of death is not to become afraid of it. It is to become free in it. Because death in Buddhism is not an end. It is a transition, a return, a movement into something wider than self. And sleep, in its own way, is a glimpse into that truth. Each night, you return, you dissolve, and you awaken. And that return is beautiful, because in it, the false ideas of who you are fade. The pressure disappears, the stories pause, and what's left is the real you, not the name, not the role, but the quiet witness who needs nothing and fears nothing. So tonight, let go like it's sacred. Let go like it's a blessing. Not because you're escaping something, but because you're finally coming home. Home to what doesn't need fixing. Home to what already knows peace. Home to the part of you that's been waiting for stillness all along. This is not just a better way to sleep, it's a better way to live, with less resistance, with more trust, with the kind of courage that doesn't fight the night, but bows to it. That says, I don't need to control this. I don't need to be anyone right now. I just need to let go. Because the art of sleeping well is not a trick. It's not a tactic. It's the result of a relationship with surrender, a relationship with death, a relationship with peace. And when that relationship is strong, you don't just rest better, you love better, you listen better, you live better, because you are no longer afraid of the pauses, you are no longer afraid of the quiet, you are no longer afraid of letting go. So tonight, let this moment be your micro-death. Let it be the place where everything unnecessary falls away, where thoughts lose their grip, where roles dissolve, where control is no longer needed. Just breath, just space, just release. Sleep is not the opposite of life. It is part of it. And surrender is not the opposite of power. It is the highest expression of it. Let go now, not later, not when you're exhausted. Let go now and feel what has always been here, waiting. A peace deeper than sleep, a freedom beyond control, a stillness that holds everything without needing to hold anything at all. When the body begins to release its grip, when the mind stops pushing and instead opens to stillness, something else becomes possible. A new kind of warmth rises, not from the outside, but from deep within. The kind that softens the heart, the kind that relaxes the chest, the kind that quietly changes the way sleep feels. Letting go is powerful, but pairing it with compassion, especially before sleep, is transformational. So many nights are disturbed not because of what's happening externally, but because of what's unresolved emotionally. Friction, tension, a heaviness in the heart that lingers from the day. It might not always be clear what's causing it. A disagreement, a moment of guilt, an old memory resurfacing without warning. These don't need to be loud to affect rest. Even subtle emotional static can keep the nervous system from settling fully. The body may be tired, the breath may be calm, but if the heart is still holding tight, true rest stays just out of reach. That's why this next teaching matters. The Buddhist practice of loving kindness, or metta, is not just a daytime meditation. When brought into the quiet of night, it becomes a ritual that can gently clear away the emotional residue that blocks deep rest. It does not require chanting or effort. It only asks for sincerity and the willingness to offer goodwill, even silently, to yourself, to others, and to all beings. That offering becomes the light that softens the edges of the day. In this practice, kindness is not dependent on perfection. It is not a reward, it is a choice, a way of saying, no matter what happened today, I choose to end it with peace, not to ignore mistakes, but to heal the wounds they leave behind. This type of compassion is not sentimental, it is strong, because it doesn't wait to feel ready. It doesn't need everything to be okay. It simply chooses care over conflict, again and again. Start with yourself. Before extending anything outward, begin inward. Acknowledge whatever is true for you right now, without needing to change it. Then silently say, may I be peaceful, may I rest well, may I forgive what needs forgiving, may I feel safe tonight. These are not affirmations, they are offerings. You're not forcing a feeling, you're creating a space for it to rise naturally. Next, think of someone you love, someone who brings warmth to your heart. Picture them gently, without expectation. Offer them the same words. May you be peaceful, may you rest well, may you be safe, may your heart be at ease. Let the words fall into the silence like drops in still water. Not dramatic, just sincere. Now comes the more difficult part, extending this same goodwill to someone you're in conflict with. Not to approve of what they did, not to forget the hurt, but to free yourself from the grip of it. Because emotional tension, even when justified, becomes poison in the body when carried too long. So instead of holding it overnight, offer release. Say, may you be peaceful, may you rest well, may you be free from suffering. Not because they earned it, but because you deserve peace. And finally, extend that same compassion outward to all beings, known and unknown, human and animal, friend and stranger. Let the boundary of your care stretch beyond the personal. Let it become universal, because deep down, every being wants the same thing: to be safe, to be free from pain, to sleep without fear. And by holding that wish, even silently, the heart begins to open wider than the self. This ritual doesn't need to be long. It doesn't need to be perfect. but the more it's practiced, the more it becomes a signal to the nervous system that it's safe to relax, that there is no battle to fight tonight, that the mind and the heart are on the same team. In Buddhism, this is known as cultivating wholesome mental states, states that reduce reactivity, soften resistance, and prepare the mind for deep rest. And the beauty of this practice is that it works even when the day was chaotic, even when emotions are tangled, even when you don't feel particularly kind. Because it's not about forcing a mood, it's about choosing a direction, turning the heart gently toward peace, even if only a few degrees. That's enough. Over time, this practice creates emotional muscle memory. The heart becomes used to softening. The mind becomes quicker to forgive. The body becomes safer to sleep in, because you're no longer carrying the unspoken weight of reactivity. You're not dragging grudges under the sheets. You're not punishing yourself for mistakes you can no longer change. You're just here, present, compassionate, ready to rest. And it's not just about others. Extending loving kindness toward yourself each night rewires the inner dialogue. The voice that used to criticize begins to calm. The tension of unmet expectations begins to melt. And instead of falling asleep feeling behind, broken, or overwhelmed, you fall asleep feeling held. This creates a pattern, not of avoidance but of gentle resolution, a nightly pause where healing can happen, not through force but through forgiveness, not through analysis but through compassion. The mind may still wander, the emotions may still rise, but in the presence of loving kindness, they lose their edge, they soften, they pass. There is also science behind this. Studies have shown that compassion-based practices reduce cortisol, regulate heart rate, and activate areas of the brain associated with empathy and emotional regulation. But beyond science, there is the quiet truth you feel in your body when you practice it. The lightness in the chest, the warmth in the belly, the feeling of being okay, even if nothing outside has changed. This is how sleep becomes sacred again. Not just something to squeeze in between distractions, but a closing ritual that honors your humanity. That says, this day was enough, I was enough, and now I rest. It might seem small, but this act of ending the day with kindness is revolutionary. In a world that rewards speed, noise, and judgment, to pause and offer love, even silently, is a radical return to what matters. And when this becomes your bedtime ritual, sleep starts to feel less like escape and more like return. A return to peace, a return to safety, a return to connection. Let it be simple. No need to overthink it. No need to force perfect feelings. Just close your eyes. Let the breath soften, and speak the words gently within. May I rest well. May others rest well. May we all be free from suffering. Let that be the last message the heart sends before sleep takes over. Let that be the rhythm that carries you into the night. No story, no conflict, just a quiet wave of compassion rippling outward. Because kindness clears the space for stillness, and stillness clears the space for rest. And in that space, sleep becomes not just possible, but natural. Tonight, as the breath slows and the body melts into the bed, let compassion be the final act. Not because everything is resolved, but because peace can begin even in the middle of unfinished things. That is the gift of this practice. That is the doorway to rest. And that is where we go next. And once compassion has softened the heart, once the weight of the day has been dissolved in kindness, there is something else that begins to reveal itself. Even in a quiet room, even with a relaxed body, even after letting go of judgment, something still stirs. Thoughts, not just thoughts, but thoughts that arrive with urgency. Thoughts that pretend they matter more now than they did all day. This is the next illusion, one of the most convincing and one of the most exhausting. The illusion that every thought at bedtime must be solved right now. It starts subtly. One thought slips in, disguised as a gentle reminder. Then another follows, a little louder, a little heavier. Before long, the mind is sprinting in circles, replaying conversations, planning tomorrow, inventing problems that didn't even exist a few minutes ago, and it always feels so real, so important, so immediate. But this is where the trap begins. This is when thoughts lie, and the lie sounds like urgency. Buddhist psychology teaches that the mind is a master of illusion, not because it's evil, but because it's wired to protect, to prepare, to control. But it doesn't know how to rest. And at night, when there's nothing left to distract it, the mind turns inward. It grabs old stories. It invents new worries. And because there's no one else around to challenge it, the voice inside starts to sound like truth. But not every thought is truth. Not every thought deserves your attention, especially not at bedtime. One of the most powerful shifts is realizing that urgency does not equal importance. Just because the mind says, "You need to think about this now," doesn't make it true. It only means the mind is trying to stay in charge. Thoughts are skilled performers. They take center stage. They create emotional reactions. They convince you that sleep must wait until the problems are solved. But no problem has ever been solved by replaying it at midnight. What's happening isn't clarity. It's mental noise dressed up in serious clothes. Buddhism calls this restlessness a form of craving. Craving for control, craving for certainty, craving for resolution. But here's the paradox. The more the mind craves resolution, the more tangled it becomes. It's like trying to smooth water with your hand. The harder you try, the more ripples you create. And this is where awareness comes in, not to stop the thoughts, not to fight them, but to see them clearly, to watch as the mind creates its illusion, to say gently, "Ah, here you are again." That noticing, that small moment of clarity is powerful because it breaks the trance. It unhooks your attention from the urgency. Some thoughts are loud but hollow. They sound like plans, but they're really just loops. They sound like insight, but they're really just old fear in new words. They sound like logic, but they're really just habit. When you begin to recognize this, a new kind of peace becomes possible. The kind that doesn't come from solving thoughts, but from not believing them. The mind is a storyteller. It wants to stay busy. It wants to feel useful. But being useful is not the same as being wise. And wisdom knows when to pause. Wisdom knows when to say, "This can wait." Wisdom knows that no insight born from exhaustion will ever bring peace. And this wisdom grows through practice. Each time you notice a thought pretending to be urgent, you gently shift your attention back to the breath, back to the feeling of the body, back to the safety of this moment, not to escape, but to anchor, because this moment is real. This thought is just passing through. Over time, this becomes a habit. The mind will still create stories. That's its nature. But you no longer get caught in them. You no longer follow every mental thread to its end. You see it, you breathe, you return, again and again. There's a phrase in Buddhist thought: thoughts are not the enemy. Believing them without question is. When thoughts pretend to be urgent, they often carry emotional hooks: guilt, worry, regret. These emotions are not problems. They're signals. They're telling you the mind is trying to fix something that cannot be fixed right now, not because you're incapable, but because it's not the right time. Night is not for fixing. It's for feeling, for softening, for dissolving the tension that's been stored all day. And when you try to fix from that tense place, the mind becomes a tangled knot. So instead, offer it what it truly needs. Not answers, but space. It can feel difficult at first. Thoughts will insist. They'll scream. They'll whisper. They'll try every trick. But the more you practice staying present, the more their grip weakens. They may still arise, but they no longer define the night. You see the show without becoming the actor, and sometimes thoughts that feel urgent are actually feelings trying to be heard. Underneath the thought, "What if this goes wrong?" is often fear. Underneath, "Why did they say that?" is usually hurt. Underneath, "I need to fix this now," is often helplessness. When you meet the emotion, the thought loses power. When you give the emotion space to be, the urgency starts to fade. Buddhism invites you to look gently, not with judgment, not with resistance, but with clear seeing, to watch the mind try to protect you, and to thank it softly while choosing not to follow. This is not denial, it's wisdom, because true peace is not the absence of thought, it's the absence of attachment to thought. So what can you do when urgency rises at bedtime? Begin by breathing slower. Slowness tells the body there is no emergency. Let the shoulders drop, let the belly soften, let the jaw release. Then speak gently to the mind. "I hear you, but we don't need to do this now. That's all. No fight, no argument, just permission to pause." And if the mind comes back again, you do the same thing, again and again. This repetition is the training. This is how the mind learns that nighttime is not the time for solving. It's the time for resting. And eventually, that message sinks in. The thoughts grow quieter. The urgency loses its power, and sleep becomes safe again. Even the most persistent thoughts cannot survive without your attention. When you stop feeding them, they fade. When you stop believing every word they say, they shrink. And what remains is space. Space for breath, space for healing, space for sleep. And this is not just about rest, it's about life. Because the same skill you build here will help you during the day, when thoughts rush in at work, when panic knocks at the door, when the world spins too fast. You'll know how to pause, how to look, how to let go. So tonight, if the mind starts its theater again, you don't need to silence it. You only need to stop applauding. Let the scene play. Let the thoughts speak. But you, the witness, stay still. You, the presence, stay grounded. And in that stillness, a new truth appears. The thought was never urgent. The peace was always here. Let the thoughts come. Let them go. Let the breath be steady. Let the body be soft. Let this moment remind you. Urgency is just another story. Rest is what's real. Rest is what's needed. Rest is what you're allowed to receive. Now, let it come. Let the mind quiet itself, not through force, but through being heard. Let the urgency fade into silence. Let the night reclaim its peace, because nothing is more important right now than surrender. And no thought is more powerful than the permission to let go. And once the false urgency of thoughts is exposed, once the mind is seen clearly, not as an enemy, but as a restless storyteller, a new insight quietly begins to rise. Maybe the reason sleep doesn't come easily isn't just because the mind is loud, but because there's a deeply held belief underneath it all. A belief that says you must have closure before you can rest. That every problem must be solved. Every emotion must be understood. Every story must have a clean ending before the body is allowed to release. But what if that belief is wrong? This next lesson isn't about fixing anything. It's about unlearning something that's been taught in silence, repeated by habit, and reinforced by anxiety. The idea that peace only comes after resolution. The myth that closure is a requirement for rest. And this belief runs deep, so deep that even when you're physically tired, emotionally drained, and desperate to sleep, the mind keeps searching for an ending. One more answer, one more conclusion, one more explanation to finally feel complete. But Buddhism offers something radically different. It doesn't teach that peace comes from solving everything. It teaches that peace comes from letting go of needing to solve everything. It invites the mind into a new relationship with life, not as a puzzle to complete, but as a flow to enter, a rhythm to trust, a truth to surrender to. And at the center of this is impermanence. Everything changes, every thought, every mood, every moment. And if everything is constantly shifting, then closure becomes an illusion, because nothing stays still long enough to be closed. What feels like an ending today may reopen tomorrow. What makes sense tonight may dissolve by morning. This is not failure. This is the nature of life. And when this truth is fully understood, something shifts deep within. The need for closure no longer owns the night. There is wisdom in not knowing. There is peace in not finishing. There is rest in the middle of uncertainty, because the mind is not designed to end everything neatly. It's designed to adapt, to flow, to witness. And the heart is not made to store every unsolved emotion like a library of unfinished business. It is made to feel and to release. This is where non-attachment becomes more than a concept. It becomes a practice. At night, when the stories rise, when the emotions beg for resolution, you meet them with gentleness, not to fix, but to allow. You say, "This too is part of the flow." You trust that what hasn't resolved now doesn't need to. You trust that clarity may come later or not at all, and still you are allowed to rest. This goes against everything you've been taught. The world says you must finish the conversation. You must find the closure. You must understand your emotions before they can be released. But Buddhism teaches the opposite, that sometimes not knowing is the most honest place to be, that sometimes the best way to honor a feeling is to let it pass without turning it into a story, that sometimes peace isn't on the other side of the answer. It's here, in the absence of needing one. This doesn't mean avoiding life. It means trusting life. It means knowing that not every question needs to be answered tonight, that some things are allowed to stay open, that healing doesn't always happen in neat chapters. Sometimes it happens in silence, in breath, in presence, in the choice to stop spinning and simply feel. The desire for closure is often a desire for control, a way to protect the self from uncertainty. But there is nothing more uncertain than life, and there is nothing more liberating than learning how to rest without resolution. Letting go of the need for closure does not mean you don't care. It means you care enough to stop hurting yourself with unfinished loops. It means you've seen that some knots tighten when pulled. That peace comes not from pulling harder, but from loosening your grip. Buddhist teachers often say, leave the question unanswered. This is not laziness. It is courage. It is maturity. It is the understanding that some answers only arrive when they are no longer needed, that some wounds close on their own when not reopened night after night. And so, this practice becomes a choice to meet the mind not with arguments, but with trust. To say, you are safe now, even with this unfinished. To say, this does not need to be complete for me to rest. To say, this moment is enough, even without conclusion. And when this becomes real, not just words, but felt truth, the nervous system changes, the breath deepens, the muscles relax, because the pressure is gone, the pressure to figure it out, the pressure to be okay, the pressure to resolve everything before sunrise. Gone. You are not a story to be finished. You are a being who is learning how to be. And sleep is not a prize for emotional completion. It is a natural part of being human, a part that you deserve, even in your messiness, even with your questions, even with your pain. In fact, some of the most restful nights come not from clarity, but from surrender, from saying, I don't know, and that's okay, from saying, this doesn't feel complete, but I will rest anyway, from saying, I will stop chasing closure and start trusting space. This trust becomes your new foundation. Not trust in specific outcomes, not trust that every problem will fix itself, but trust in the process. Trust that feelings move, that thoughts pass, that life continues, and that sleep can hold you even while life is still unfolding. So, as you lie down tonight, if your mind returns to something unfinished, don't push it away, don't analyze it. Just greet it gently, say hello, say thank you, and let it pass like a wave. Trust that you are allowed to sleep before it's resolved. Trust that rest does not depend on completion. Trust that closure is not the gatekeeper of peace. This is how you make peace with the night. Not by forcing it to make sense, but by letting it be exactly what it is. A space to soften, a space to breathe, a space to trust what doesn't yet make sense. And over time, this practice changes more than just your nights. It changes how you meet every part of life. You begin to see that peace is not something that waits at the end of every task. It is something that lives in the middle of everything, in the middle of your joy, in the middle of your grief, in the middle of your unspoken thoughts, always available, always here. So if tonight feels unfinished, if the story is still messy, if the feeling is still loud, if the thoughts are still searching, that's okay. You don't need to silence them. You don't need to solve them. You only need to stop chasing. Let them float. Let them rest. And you rest too. Because closure is not what brings rest. Trust is. Non-attachment is. The quiet courage to be here without needing to control. That is the doorway. That is the peace. That is where the night begins. Let it hold you now, just as you are. Unfinished and still enough. And now, with the grip of needing closure finally loosened, with the mind no longer chasing unfinished answers through the night, a new truth begins to surface. It is not just the day's stress or unsolved thoughts that make sleep difficult. It is the deeper cycle that underlies it all. A cycle far older than the day, a pattern not created in one night, but woven into existence itself. This is where we meet samsara. In Buddhist teaching, samsara is not simply a realm or a place. It is the experience of wandering. Wandering through thoughts, wandering through desires, wandering through suffering. It is the cycle of craving and aversion, of clinging and resisting, of hoping for something different than what is here. And it is this very cycle that plays out every night on the pillow. The mind keeps spinning, the heart keeps reaching, the body stays tense. Not because of what is happening in the room, but because of what is happening in the cycle within. To sleep deeply is not only a physical act, it is a spiritual one. It is a moment where you step outside of the wheel, where grasping stops, where seeking ends, where there is nothing to chase and nothing to run from. But this can only happen when samsara is seen clearly, not as a mystical idea, but as the pattern behind restlessness itself. Every thought that says this moment isn't enough is samsara. Every sensation that sparks the urge to fix or escape is samsara. Every comparison, every worry, every memory you grip, every future you fear, these are the wheels turning. And if you try to sleep while caught in them, the mind remains alert, the body remains tight, and the night becomes just another arena for suffering. This is why Buddhism doesn't teach escape. It teaches awakening. Not escape from pain, but freedom from the false belief that you must chase your way into peace. Samsara feeds on that belief. It says, "You'll rest once you get this one thing." But then another thing appears, and another. And so the cycle continues. The way out is not to silence the wheel. It is to step off of it, not through effort, but through clarity, through the quiet seeing that none of it leads where it promises to go. Craving doesn't end craving. Control doesn't create calm. Striving doesn't deliver peace. And when that is seen, not just thought, but felt, something shifts. The grasping releases, the spinning slows, and in its place comes rest. This is not the kind of rest you force. It's not the kind you trick your body into through hacks or routines. It's the rest that arises when there is nothing left to chase. When the moment is no longer rejected, when presence is no longer postponed, when peace is no longer placed in a future that never comes. And this is why sleep becomes a teaching, because it reveals samsara in a raw, unfiltered way. In the darkness, the mind tries every old trick. It tries to replay, to control, to label, to run, and none of it works. The same thoughts loop, the same discomfort lingers, until you stop fighting, until you say, "Let it be, let it pass, let it dissolve." And in that moment, samsara weakens, not destroyed, not conquered, just no longer in charge. This is not about suppressing desire or pretending not to care. It's about releasing the need to satisfy every desire before peace is allowed, about not needing every condition to be perfect before stillness is welcome, about not needing every emotion to be wrapped in clarity before the heart can soften. When samsara is seen clearly, suffering starts to look less like a problem and more like a pattern. And once it's seen as a pattern, it can be stepped out of. Not escaped from, but no longer obeyed, no longer believed, no longer followed through every restless corner of the night. The teachings often describe this as the end of becoming, the end of always needing to be someone, go somewhere, fix something. The end of constant mental movement. That stillness, pure, open, and alive, is what sleep becomes when samsara is paused. This doesn't mean you become detached or cold. In fact, the opposite. When the cycle of craving is seen through, you become more present, more kind, more alive. Because you are no longer distracted by needing everything to be different. You can feel without fleeing. You can think without following. You can rest without earning it. And so the practice becomes one of awareness. You lie down and you feel the urge to think, to plan, to evaluate. And you don't fight it. You just notice it. You say, "Ah, this too is samsara." And in that recognition, you don't have to engage. You don't have to fix. You don't have to resist. You can just rest. The cycle loses its power when it's seen. It becomes like a game you've played too many times. The thrill is gone. The storyline doesn't stick. You can smile at it. You can bow to it. But you don't have to join. And even if the thoughts come back, and they will, you meet them differently. Not as enemies, not as urgent tasks, but as echoes of a pattern you no longer feed. You let them rise, you let them pass, and you return, not to silence but to awareness, not to perfection but to presence. This is sleeping through samsara, not pretending the world is peaceful, not waiting for everything to be solved, but learning how to rest even as the wheel turns, learning how to sleep without letting the mind spin in circles, learning how to stay grounded in stillness even when the thoughts try to run. And the deeper this is practiced, the more it seeps into waking life. The same clarity that lets you rest at night lets you move through the day with less reactivity. The same freedom that lets you release mental loops in the dark lets you navigate challenges in the light. Because samsara is not limited to sleepless nights, it lives in habits, in reactions, in speech, in craving for identity. But awareness travels with you, and once trained, it touches every moment. Let sleep be your starting place. Let the night become your practice ground, not to perform, not to control, but to release, to observe, to unhook, to soften. And then let that stillness ripple forward, into your morning, into your conversations, into your choices. This is how the cycle ends, not with resistance, but with awareness. Not by destroying samsara, but by no longer fueling it. And when that happens, rest is no longer rare. It becomes your natural state, not a moment stolen from stress, but a space you return to freely. Let tonight be that return. Let samsara spin if it must, but you stay still. You stay present. You stay with the breath that doesn't chase, the body that doesn't grasp, the heart that doesn't beg for resolution. This is how you sleep through samsara. Not as escape, but as clarity. Not by fixing the wheel, but by stepping outside it. And once you're outside, you begin to see that peace was never something far away. It was here, beneath the noise, beneath the craving, waiting, always waiting, for you to notice, for you to stop, for you to rest. And now that the wheel of samsara has slowed, now that the restless momentum has been witnessed and released, what remains is something far more intimate. Not a big idea, not a concept to understand, but something soft, immediate, hidden in plain sight. The breath, and more than the breath itself, the space between. The stillness that lives in the quiet moment after an inhale ends before an exhale begins. The small gap, the unnoticed pause, that silence between breaths. This is not an absence. It's a doorway. A moment where time loosens, where thought pauses, where effort vanishes. It's not something created. It's already there, waiting, always present, yet rarely noticed. Because most of the time, attention rides the breath like a wave, focused on its rise and fall, its speed, its rhythm. But the deeper invitation is not just to follow the breath, but to rest in the pause between. In Buddhist breath meditation, these pauses are sacred. They are not voids. They are presence without identity, awareness without story, stillness without trying. And when you begin to rest in them, something begins to dissolve, not by force, not by analysis, but by nature. Mental noise cannot survive long in stillness, and this particular stillness has no edge. It doesn't resist or cling. It just is. The inhale comes, then silence, then the exhale, then silence again. Each pause becomes a softening, a landing, a reminder. Nothing needs to be added, nothing needs to be fixed. In the pause, everything is allowed to settle. This practice does not require control. It's not about holding the breath. It's about noticing what is already there. The breath flows, and between its movements there is space. This space is often missed because the mind moves too quickly. It jumps from inhale to exhale, from past to future. But the pause asks nothing. It offers everything. It is rest in its purest form. At night, when the world is quiet and the thoughts try to take center stage again, this technique becomes a refuge. Not because it silences the mind with force, but because it gives the mind somewhere deeper to rest, something quieter than thought, more trustworthy than emotion, more stable than control. The silence between breaths is not dramatic. It doesn't announce itself. That's why it's so powerful. It is the doorway into the part of you that isn't trying to become anything. The part that already is. The part that doesn't carry tension because it's not attached to any role or outcome. When attention settles there, even briefly, the body relaxes in ways that no technique can force. The nervous system recalibrates. The mind slows, not because it's told to, but because it finds peace naturally in that stillness. In Buddhist mindfulness training, this is known as sati, the act of remembering. Remembering the breath, remembering the present, remembering the pause that holds it all. This is not remembering with the mind. It's remembering with awareness. Coming home to the simple truth that you are alive and that this moment is complete, even without explanation. Each time the mind begins to spin again, you return to the breath, to the pause, to the space between, not as escape, but as re-entry into what's real. This practice builds over time. The body begins to expect stillness. The mind begins to trust it, and instead of pulling away from the present, you begin to sink into it. The silence between breaths is not about emptiness. It's about fullness without movement, presence without effort, peace without needing a reason. It is where all striving fades, where thoughts have no anchor, where self-definition pauses and awareness expands. And the more you rest there, the less you need from sleep. Because the mind is no longer working overtime. The heart is no longer gripping. The body is no longer preparing for something it can't control. The silence between breaths teaches you how to rest while awake. It teaches the nervous system how to dissolve gently, without shutdown, without suppression. You can begin by simply noticing the moment after you breathe in. Let your attention rest there for just one beat, not holding it, just noticing. Then let the breath flow out, and again, after the exhale, pause. Feel the stillness, even if it's short, even if the mind tries to move. Keep coming back. With each return, something settles deeper. The attention becomes finer, more sensitive, not distracted by the surface of things, not thrown around by thoughts, but anchored in that gentle space that holds everything together. The gap is small, but the peace inside it is enormous, and it's always available, even in moments of stress, even in moments of pain. The breath continues, the silence remains, waiting, patient, undisturbed. And when you build a relationship with that silence, you carry it with you, into your evenings, into your sleep, into your life. This practice is not about becoming someone new. It's about removing the noise that hides who you've always been. The breath does not ask you to change. It invites you to return. The pause between breaths does not require understanding. It only asks for presence. And that presence heals, softly, fully, quietly. There are no steps to master, no levels to unlock. Only the willingness to pay attention to what's already happening. The body breathes, the mind watches, the heart softens, and in the space between all of it, peace arrives. This kind of peace doesn't announce itself. It doesn't glow. It doesn't make promises. But it transforms the quality of your life in quiet, lasting ways. You become less reactive, less tangled, more grounded, more present, because you're no longer floating on the surface of your thoughts. You're resting in the stillness underneath. Let this be your anchor tonight. Not a mantra, not a goal, just breath, just pause, just space. Let each breath lead you to its silence. Let each silence lead you to yourself. Let each return show you that you never really left. This is the practice. This is the doorway. This is the rest your body has been waiting for, not something to achieve, something to allow. The silence between breaths, small, subtle, sacred, and completely enough. And after resting in the stillness between breaths, after discovering that peace doesn't come from adding more, but from becoming less involved in the noise, a subtler layer begins to rise. Even when the body is still, even when the thoughts soften, something deeper can remain. A sense of identity. A quiet narrative running underneath the silence. The belief that this is who I am. And for many, especially those who struggle with rest, that belief sounds like this: I'm a bad sleeper. This single sentence seems harmless, almost factual, but Buddhist wisdom reveals something far more powerful and far more dangerous about it. The moment the mind accepts that label, not as a passing condition, but as a definition, it locks itself into suffering. Not because the body can't sleep, but because the self has become attached to the identity of someone who can't. In Buddhist teachings, this is the illusion of self, the mind's tendency to attach to roles, labels, patterns, and treat them as permanent truths. When the mind says, I am an insomniac, it is not simply describing experience. It is creating a framework through which every future moment is filtered. Every yawn becomes proof. Every restless night becomes a prophecy fulfilled. Every attempt to sleep becomes an uphill battle, not because of the body, but because the identity says, this is hard for me, this is who I am. The non-self teaching in Buddhism, known as anatta, points to the liberating truth that the self is not fixed. There is no unchanging me inside. There are patterns, conditions, causes and effects, but no permanent identity holding it all together. When you understand this, even partially, the grip of labels starts to dissolve. The story loses its weight, and the suffering born from clinging to identity begins to fade. Renouncing the identity of the insomniac does not mean pretending you sleep well. It means seeing clearly that difficulty sleeping is a condition, not a character trait. It's an experience, not a personality. The difference is everything. Because when the difficulty becomes an identity, the nervous system reacts before the night even begins. The mind prepares for battle, the body tightens, the breath shortens. The fear of not sleeping becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. But when the difficulty is seen as a passing condition, shaped by habits, stress, energy, environment, it becomes workable. It can shift. It can improve. Not because the self gets better, but because the illusion of self loosens. And this loosening is freedom, not from sleeplessness, but from the need to make it personal. Buddhist psychology shows that suffering is magnified when discomfort is taken personally. When you say, "This is happening to me," instead of "This is simply happening," the more tightly you grip your role in the experience, the more difficult the experience becomes. The identity of the insomniac is sticky. It gets reinforced by conversations, by labels from professionals, by years of evidence. But Buddhism asks a deeper question. Who are you when no thought arises? Who are you when you're not telling yourself any story? Who are you in the silence between breaths? That's where the false identity begins to crumble, because in that silence there is no insomniac, no sleeper, no narrative, just presence, just awareness, just life unfolding. And it's in that moment you start to realize sleep isn't being blocked by your body. It's being blocked by your relationship to who you think you are. The thought, "I can't sleep," isn't just a report, it's a rehearsal. Every time you say it, even internally, you rehearse being someone who struggles, and the body, loyal to your beliefs, responds accordingly. But you can begin to let go. Gently, not by forcing a new belief, not by replacing "I'm a bad sleeper" with "I'm a great sleeper." That's still identification. The invitation is deeper, to let go of needing to identify at all, to meet the night without a label, to meet the moment without dragging the past into it. This moment has never happened before. This night is not the same as the others. Your body is not the same. Your mind is not the same. And yet, the story says it is. That's the trap. The story folds time. It creates patterns out of memory, and then uses those patterns to predict the future. But sleep doesn't happen in the past or future. It happens now, in a body that breathes, in a moment that is alive. When the mind says, "This will be another bad night," it's not telling the truth. It's telling a memory, and you are not required to believe it. So how do you step out of the identity? You start with awareness. You notice when the label arises. You hear the thought, "I can't sleep," and instead of reacting, you respond, "That's just a thought." You hear, "I'm someone who always struggles," and you pause. That's just a story. You return to the breath. You return to the body. You return to presence. Not to fix anything, but to see clearly. Each time you step out of the story, you weaken the identity. Each time you rest in awareness, you create space. And sleep happens in space, not in story. This doesn't mean you'll never have another restless night. It means the restlessness won't define you. It won't become who you are. It will just be what it is, a passing moment, a changing condition, nothing personal, nothing permanent. And slowly, something begins to shift. The nights feel less like battles. The body feels less like a failure. The mind feels less like an enemy. Because the weight of identity is no longer pressing against every moment. Even the language changes. You stop saying, "I am." You start saying, "There is." Not, "I am anxious," but "anxiety is present." Not, "I am an insomniac," but "there is restlessness tonight." This is how non-self becomes practical. This is how it heals, because the self is heavy. It clings, it fears, it compares. But awareness is light. It sees, it opens, it releases, and it is always available, closer than any thought, quieter than any story, more spacious than any identity. So tonight, drop the title. Let go of the label. Meet the night without a role to play. Let the body be just a body. Let the breath be just breath. Let the thoughts come and go without attaching to their voice. You don't need to fix your identity. You only need to see that you are not it. You are not your sleep history. You are not your most difficult night. You are not your most restless thought. You are the presence that watches, the stillness that returns, the awareness that remains. And in that presence, you are free. Free to rest, free to wake, free to let go of who you think you are. Because peace does not come to the insomniac. It comes to the one who no longer needs to be anyone at all. And now that the label has been dropped, now that the mind no longer clings to being a bad sleeper, and the self has loosened its grip on identity, there is room to go even deeper. Not into another technique, but into a complete reimagining of where sleep takes place. Because even with all the inner work, the space in which rest occurs holds energy. The body remembers how it feels in that space. And for many, the bed has silently become a place of pressure, of failure, of frustration. But what if that space could be transformed, not physically, but spiritually? This next step invites a radical, healing shift. It begins not with behavior, but with perception. With the way the mind views the bed, the pillow, the act of lying down. Because if the bed has become a battleground, where thoughts attack, where tension rises, where identity clings, then of course the body resists rest. But Buddhism shows us how everything can be turned into practice. Even the pillow, even the sheets, even the mattress can be seen not as the site of struggle, but as a sacred space. A place not for performance, but for surrender. Reverence is not about formality. It's about presence. It's about respect. It's the energy of treating something ordinary with care, with intention, with mindfulness. When the pillow becomes a meditation cushion, the entire psychology of sleep shifts. You are no longer going to bed. You are entering a temple, a place where effort ends, where the noise of the day stays at the door, where stillness is not optional, it is honored. And this change is not something that happens outside of you. It happens in the way you relate to what's already there. The blanket becomes a symbol of safety. The breath becomes the incense. The stillness becomes the offering. There are no candles, no mantras, no rituals needed, just the willingness to treat the space with respect, just the willingness to treat the act of rest as sacred. This shift isn't abstract. It has psychological power. When the body feels that it is entering a peaceful space, it responds. The nervous system begins to unwind before the first breath is even slowed. The mind receives the message. This is not where we fight. This is where we let go. In Buddhism, temples are not built only to worship. They are built to create energy. When people sit in reverence, when the air is filled with silence and attention, something in the environment changes. That same principle can apply to your own bed, not by changing its design, but by changing your relationship to it. Each night, the way you approach the pillow becomes a ritual, not mechanical, but mindful, not dramatic, but sacred. The act of laying down is no longer about ending the day. It becomes an entrance into stillness, a doorway into another way of being. You are not collapsing into sleep. You are arriving into presence, and this matters because the mind responds to symbols. When the bed becomes a site of struggle, even subconsciously, it activates defense. But when it becomes a site of peace, It activates softness, and softness is the only environment in which deep rest can grow. Let the pillow remind you of your intention. Let it become the ground where control is released. Let it become the silent teacher that invites you into non-doing, not as a burden, not as a fix, but as a blessing, as a space that holds your weight without question, as a place that supports you, not just physically, but emotionally. Each time you rest your head, let it be a gesture of letting go. Let it be a bow to presence. Let it be an offering, not of answers, not of goals, but of awareness. Awareness that this moment is sacred. Awareness that this space is safe. Awareness that there is nowhere else to be. This reframing has power because it interrupts the habitual associations. It replaces frustration with respect. It replaces resistance with acceptance. And over time, the body begins to feel that change. The muscles remember the softness. The breath remembers the stillness. The heart remembers that it is welcome here. You may still have thoughts. You may still feel restless. But now those experiences unfold in a different space. They arise not in a war zone, but in a sanctuary. And that makes all the difference, because even restlessness can soften when it's held with reverence. The pillow becomes your cushion. The bed becomes your mat. And sleep becomes not something you fall into, but something you return to, like a monk returning to silence, like a leaf returning to the earth. With humility, with gentleness, with peace. And this shift doesn't need to be perfect. There is no pressure to create some flawless ritual. It's the mindset that matters. It's the quiet commitment to honoring your rest as something more than physical. It's treating sleep not as a task, but as a teacher. You can deepen this even further by adjusting how you think of the night. Instead of seeing it as time lost, see it as time offered, time for the mind to release, time for the heart to soften, time for the body to heal. Each night becomes a retreat, not an escape, but a renewal. And in this renewal, you're not asked to perform. You're not asked to be perfect. You're only asked to be present, to be still, to listen, to rest. Not because you've earned it, but because it is your right. The Buddhist path reminds us that every moment can be practice. Every environment can be sacred. The way you walk, the way you sit, the way you sleep, all of it can be turned toward awakening. All of it can carry the same energy of awareness. And this awareness, brought into the space of sleep, transforms the entire experience. It dissolves pressure. It replaces performance with devotion. It turns the bed from a place of problems into a place of peace. And it tells the body, you are safe now. You are allowed to release. You are held. This is not a trick. This is not a sleep hack. This is a change in how you live. And the more it is practiced, the more natural it becomes. Until eventually, the bed no longer triggers frustration. It triggers presence. It becomes a signal to the body that it's time to return, not to effort, but to rest. Let tonight be a beginning. Let the pillow be your cushion. Let the silence be your guide. Let the breath be your offering. Not to achieve anything, but to honor what's already here. The sacred space, the quiet presence, the peaceful return to yourself. This is how sleep becomes spiritual, not by adding anything, but by remembering what it already is. A return to stillness, a release into presence, a homecoming into peace. And once the bed becomes sacred again, once the pillow no longer carries the weight of frustration, but holds a soft, reverent invitation into stillness, something more honest begins to surface. Even with all the practices, all the awareness, all the releasing, there will still be nights that don't go the way the mind hopes. Nights when rest doesn't arrive easily, when the body stays alert, when the silence feels distant. And this, too, is part of the path. This next teaching arrives with deep compassion, because it's not about doing more. It's about letting go of the final illusion that blocks rest, the idea that every night must go perfectly, that sleep must follow a straight line, that progress must look like consistency. This hidden expectation builds quiet pressure, and that pressure becomes the very tension that disrupts rest. But Buddhism offers something gentler, something more true, the understanding that all things are impermanent, including sleep itself. When you begin to see sleep through the lens of impermanence, everything changes. A restless night is no longer a failure. It's just a moment, a wave in the larger ocean, a passing weather pattern in the vast sky of awareness. The breath still flows, the body still receives rest in stillness, and the mind, even when active, is still part of the practice. There is no punishment in the pauses, no shame in the struggle, only experience arising and fading, just like everything else. This is one of the deepest principles in Buddhist wisdom, that suffering grows when you resist what's here, and peace grows when you allow it to pass. Restless nights don't need to be fixed. They need to be met with presence, with acceptance, with the understanding that no single moment defines the whole. When sleep becomes a spiritual practice rather than a performance, the need for perfection disappears. The body is not a machine, it is a process, a constantly changing flow of sensations, energy, hormones, breath, emotion. Sleep reflects this impermanence. It ebbs and flows, it deepens and lightens. It follows rhythms that can't be forced into symmetry. The more the mind demands a perfect night, the more the nervous system tightens. But the moment you say, "This night is enough, even as it is," that tension begins to soften. And this isn't about giving up on rest. It's about releasing the pressure that sabotages it. When you stop needing the night to be perfect, you create the conditions for it to be peaceful. Because peace doesn't require things to go your way. It only requires non-resistance. It only requires the willingness to let each moment be what it is. This shift has emotional weight. Many people carry shame around their sleep, a sense that something is wrong with them if they can't rest fully every night. But Buddhism teaches that this kind of judgment is unnecessary, that the mind can hold itself with compassion, that even when things are not easy, they are still okay. A night of restlessness is not a setback. It's a teaching. It shows the mind its cravings. It reveals the edges of control. It brings into the light what still holds tension. These nights are not in the way. They are part of the way, and they hold just as much value as the peaceful ones. To meet these nights with kindness is the practice. To say, even though this feels difficult, I will not add judgment to it. To say, even without perfect rest, I can find quiet here. This is how spiritual maturity develops, not in ideal conditions, but in the willingness to meet what is real. The teaching of impermanence reminds you that every experience changes, that the mind that feels restless now may feel calm later, that the body that feels tense may soften on its own, that nothing is locked in. Even this moment is already moving. And when you deeply feel that truth, even a restless night becomes bearable. You don't need to rush it away. You don't need to panic. You don't need to cling to hope or fall into despair. You can simply wait. You can breathe. You can watch. And you can rest in awareness, even when sleep itself feels far. This kind of rest is subtle. It's not about unconsciousness. It's about releasing the fight, about being still without needing escape. The mind may still wander, the heart may still race, but you are not broken, you are not behind. You are just in a different part of the wave. There is a story in Buddhist tradition about a monk who, for years, struggled with his thoughts during meditation. One night, he finally stopped trying to fix them. He just sat, still, open, unattached. And in that surrender, the storm passed. Not because he forced it, but because he stopped fueling it. This is the same with sleep. The night does not need to be perfect. The thoughts do not need to be gone. The body does not need to behave. It's your relationship to the experience that transforms it. You can turn toward the discomfort. You can breathe into the tension. You can say, "This too belongs." That's what makes the difference, not the condition itself, but the presence you bring to it. And slowly, the pressure fades. The voice that says, "Why can't I sleep?" loses its urgency. The need to control fades into the background. And even if sleep doesn't come right away, you are not at war with yourself. You are not adding weight to what is already heavy. You are just resting, softly, fully, honestly. The next night may be different, or it may not. But either way, you are building something more stable than sleep. You are building peace. Peace that does not depend on outcomes. Peace that holds space for every experience. Peace that says, "I trust this process, even when I do not understand it." Let this be your new measure of rest. Not how many hours you slept, but how little you resisted. Not how still your body was, but how kind your mind became. Not whether sleep was deep, but whether judgment was absent. And in this, you become free, because you no longer chase the illusion of perfect rest. You simply rest, in the body, in the breath, in the silence, in the unfolding of each imperfect sacred night. So tonight, let go of the chase, let go of the checklist, let go of the pressure to get it right. Let the night be what it is. Let your heart stay open to it. Let your breath stay soft within it. You are not required to earn peace. You are only asked to stop resisting it. Because not every night must be perfect. But every night can still be beautiful. Every night can still be a teacher. Every night can still be enough. Let this one be, just as it is. No performance, no pressure, just presence and trust. And once the myth of the perfect night dissolves, once the pressure has been replaced with presence, something even softer is allowed to emerge. With nothing left to resist, with no image of how sleep should be weighing on the heart, what rises in the stillness is not sleep itself, but the one who watches, the quiet observer within, a presence beneath all striving. This is where a deeper kind of rest begins, not in unconsciousness, but in awareness, in the calm gaze of the inner monk at midnight. This is not a monk who sits on a mountain or chants mantras into the wind. This is the part of you that watches without needing to fix. The part that doesn't react to restlessness, but holds it gently. It is a presence within you that is untouched by the racing mind. It doesn't push thoughts away. It doesn't chase sleep. It simply remains, still, open, peaceful. In Buddhist teaching, the monk represents equanimity, not the absence of emotion, but the ability to stay balanced within it. And this is the exact quality that changes everything at night. Because once you stop seeing wakefulness as a problem and start seeing it as something to witness, the whole relationship with the night transforms. You're no longer a person failing to sleep. You're a witness resting in awareness. Equanimity does not mean indifference. It does not mean that you don't care whether you sleep. It means you care enough to stay kind even when rest doesn't come easily. It means you're not pulled into the stories about tomorrow's fatigue or yesterday's patterns. You stay here with what is. That's the monk energy, unshaken, not cold, but deeply calm. And this inner monk can be cultivated, not as a role to play, but as a quality to embody. It begins by noticing how quickly the mind jumps during wakefulness. It wants to calculate the hours left. It wants to check the time. It wants to replay mistakes or plan conversations or worry about the coming day. The inner monk hears those movements and simply breathes, observes, doesn't follow. This presence has no urgency. It has no resistance. It doesn't scold the mind for thinking. It just watches. This is what allows you to rest even while awake. Because true rest is not about silence. It's about non-engagement. The mind may be noisy, but the witness is still. That stillness is your temple in the middle of the night. To strengthen this presence, begin with breath awareness, not to control the breath, but to anchor the moment. Notice the inhale, the pause, the exhale. Let the breath be your seat. Let it remind you that even now you are supported. Even now, nothing urgent is happening. Even now, you can stay here. The inner monk does not label the night. It does not say good or bad. It does not say early or late. It simply notes what is present. Thought, tension, softness, movement. It doesn't attach meaning. It doesn't tell stories. It just sees. And in that seeing, the emotional charge begins to drop. The drama of the mind begins to fade. This doesn't mean thoughts stop. It means they lose their grip. You become like the monk watching a storm through the window. You see the clouds move, you hear the wind, but you don't step into it. You stay seated, calm, curious, present. This is a skill. It's not always easy, but it is always possible. And the more you practice, the more natural it becomes. Sleeplessness stops being a crisis. It becomes a space for presence. You're not just lying awake. You're cultivating stillness. You're training the heart to remain open even when things don't go as planned. And this training carries over into life. Because the way you meet the night becomes the way you meet the world. If you can stay soft in discomfort, if you can stay calm in uncertainty, you begin to live with the same grace you bring to the pillow. You become less reactive, less controlled by outcomes, more able to meet each moment with clarity and kindness. The inner monk is not a fantasy. It is a quality within you that's already there. You felt it in moments when the mind paused and everything felt simple. You felt it in the quiet before dawn, in the breath before speaking, in the moment after a deep exhale. That's the monk, waiting, patient, steady. And the night, especially when restless, is a chance to connect with that part. Not by force, not by trying to be spiritual, but by returning over and over to the breath, to the body, to the witnessing presence that says, "This too is okay." You can practice by saying silently, "Let me just observe." Not fix, not judge, just see. The thoughts come and go. The body shifts. The breath continues. And you remain. Not as the thinker, not as the sleeper, but as the quiet center behind it all. And in this quiet, something beautiful happens. The grip of thought weakens. The fear of not sleeping fades. The tension that once took over begins to dissolve. Because the monk within you is not afraid of being awake. The monk knows that peace is available in this moment, not just in unconsciousness. This peace is deeper than rest. It is peace that does not depend on conditions, peace that is not threatened by thought, peace that watches the night unfold without resistance. Let yourself rest in that tonight, even if the body stays alert, even if the mind remains active. You can still be at peace. You can still breathe. You can still watch with kindness. That is the true sleep of the monk, not unconsciousness, but the letting go of inner conflict. Let this moment be enough. Let your breath be your seat. Let your attention soften. You are not failing. You are watching. You are not lost. You are witnessing. You are not broken. You are returning to the quiet space within that is untouched by noise, by fear, by time. This is the gift of the night. Not only rest, but realization. Not only sleep, but stillness. And that stillness is yours, always. No matter how many thoughts arise, no matter how many hours pass, the monk remains. Quiet, gentle, awake. And you, when you stay with that awareness, you rest in the same peace. Not later, now. And after sitting with the inner monk in the quiet hours, after learning to witness rather than resist, to observe rather than solve, a deeper comfort begins to unfold. But even as the body softens and the mind slows, there's one final tension that often hides beneath it all, a quiet, persistent pressure. The pressure to improve, to become better, to fix something before permission to rest is granted. This is where the next illusion must be gently undone. The belief that sleep must be earned by self-improvement. In many modern cultures, the day is filled with subtle messages that say, "You are not enough." Productivity is praised, flaws are analyzed, emotions are measured, goals are chased, and when the night comes, all of that noise doesn't stop. It simply goes inward. The body lies down, but the mind keeps working, replaying what wasn't achieved, reviewing mistakes, planning how to be better tomorrow, and under all of it, the silent assumption that something is missing now. But Buddhism offers a radical and beautiful truth. Nothing is missing from this moment, even if goals were not met. even if emotions are still unresolved, even if you didn't become your best self today. The heart is still here. The breath is still flowing. The awareness that watches it all is already whole. Peace doesn't require completion. It only asks for presence. This is not about giving up on growth. It's about ending the chase that never lets the soul rest. It's about stepping out of the trap that says you must be fully healed to deserve sleep, that you must sort your thoughts, fix your flaws, tie up your feelings neatly before your head can touch the pillow. That belief is a cage. It turns rest into a reward for perfection, and that perfection never arrives. Buddhist practice points toward a different view, that each moment, no matter how messy or incomplete, is already sacred, that you don't have to resolve everything to rest deeply, that your worth is not measured by how many tasks you completed today, and that inner peace is not a destination reached through effort. It's a space revealed through letting go. This letting go is not laziness, it's wisdom, because the part of you that always wants to fix, to upgrade, to improve, that part is never satisfied. It believes rest must be delayed until everything is right. But the mind never finds rest that way, because there is always something else to optimize, always something else to regret. So the practice becomes this: letting go of self-improvement long enough to fall asleep. Not forever. Just for now. Just for this night. Just for these few hours when the mind doesn't need to be edited and the heart doesn't need to be repaired. Just the willingness to say, this is enough. I am enough. This moment does not need to be different. It starts by noticing the urge to fix. The thought that says, why did I say that today? Or, I should have handled that better. The plan that begins with, tomorrow I'll be more focused, more disciplined, more kind. These thoughts are familiar, but they are not urgent. They are habits, and like all habits, they lose power when met with awareness. You can say to the mind, thank you, but not now. You can say, we've done enough today. You can say, this isn't the time to edit who I am. These words are not affirmations, they are reminders that the deepest healing doesn't come from fixing. It comes from resting in what is already whole. And even when parts of the day still feel raw, even when feelings are unresolved, even when the to-do list echoes in your head, the body is still worthy of rest. The mind is still allowed to soften. The heart is still welcome to be held in stillness. This approach doesn't mean ignoring what matters. It means understanding what can wait. Growth is not stopped by sleep. It is supported by it. Real transformation happens not in constant correction, but in the quiet acceptance that arises when effort is paused. Let the breath remind you that life continues even without control. Let the body remind you that it knows how to release without being told. Let the awareness within you settle into the truth that no improvement is required for this moment to be complete. In Buddhist teaching, there is a concept called tathata, suchness. It means the way things are, not how they should be, not how we wish they were, just as they are. And resting in suchness is one of the highest forms of wisdom. It is the opposite of striving. It is the heart's quiet agreement with reality. So, when the mind says, I didn't do enough, you can say, maybe so, but I'm still allowed to rest. When it says, "I didn't grow today," you can say, "Growth happens slowly, and this moment is part of it." When it says, "I'm not there yet," you can say, "There is no there, just this breath, just this now." These simple truths do not remove your goals. They remove the suffering that comes from thinking rest must wait. And as that pressure dissolves, something softer rises. The nervous system unwinds, the breath becomes deeper, the inner critic grows quiet. Because there is no more work to do right now, no one to be, nothing to fix. Even if you cried today, even if you failed, even if you forgot every lesson, you can still lie down and let go. You can still be kind to yourself. You can still end the day without judgment. That kindness is not weakness. It is the soil where deeper strength will grow. This shift is what creates space for real rest. Not sleep as escape, but sleep as return. A return to the part of you that never needed to be improved. The part that watches all your becoming, but is never touched by it. That part is always calm, always whole, always here. Let this moment be the one where you stop pushing, stop comparing, stop rewriting yourself in your head. Let your pillow hold the weight of the day. Let your breath carry the mind gently back to the body. Let your awareness release the grip on self-image. This is how peace enters, not by earning it, but by making space for it. This is how rest becomes real, not by achieving it, but by letting go of the belief that something must be achieved first. So tonight, don't try to be better. Don't rehearse tomorrow's version of you. Don't polish today's mistakes. Just be. Just breathe. Just exist, fully, without editing. Let your heart settle in its rawness. Let your mind unwind without solving. Let your body know that nothing else is needed. You do not have to be perfect to rest well. You do not have to be fixed to feel safe. You do not have to become better to be held by sleep. Let that truth wrap around you like a blanket. Let it hold you through the night. You are enough. This moment is whole. Let go of fixing. Let go of striving. Let rest begin, not at the end of perfection, but at the beginning of trust. Trust that the one who is present right now is already complete, even in the middle of becoming, even in the midst of feeling, even with the day unfinished. And when you meet yourself there, with no task to complete, no role to perform, no identity to polish, what remains is peace, not because you created it, but because it was here all along, waiting, quiet, ready to receive you exactly as you are. And after loosening the grip of self-improvement, after finally letting go of the exhausting habit of editing yourself before rest, there is one final craving that quietly sneaks in through the back door of the mind. It doesn't scream, it whispers, it pretends to be hope, but it's really another disguise for resistance, the craving for the morning, the silent, constant ache for time to move faster, the wish that the night would end, so peace could begin. This is where suffering takes on a new shape, not because of what is happening, but because of the mind's refusal to be with it. This craving is subtle. It doesn't feel like clinging at first. It sounds like something innocent. I just want morning to come. I wish this night would be over. I can't wait for the sun. But underneath those thoughts is the same old pattern. resisting the moment in front of you, waiting for something else to save you from the discomfort of now. And Buddhism teaches that this waiting, this longing, is suffering in its most disguised form. The mind tells a simple lie, that peace is waiting on the other side of time, that tomorrow will feel better, that the light will bring relief, that once the sun rises, everything will soften. But that belief keeps you frozen in a state of quiet dissatisfaction, because it postpones your rest, it postpones your presence. It says, not this moment, the next one. And every time the mind leans toward the future, the body stays tense, because the nervous system responds not to what's true, but to what's believed. If you believe you must escape the night to feel calm, then you'll remain in resistance the entire time. You'll pace in your thoughts. You'll crave a clock to move faster. You'll live in a place that hasn't arrived yet. And in doing so, you'll miss the only place where peace is actually possible. This breath, this stillness, this now. The suffering of wanting morning to arrive is a form of time-based craving. It doesn't just want change, it wants change now. And every moment that change doesn't come, the suffering grows. It's like leaning forward in a chair for hours. Eventually, something in your body begins to ache. That ache is not from the chair. It's from the way you're sitting in it. Buddhism teaches that time is not the enemy, but attachment to time is. The mind's constant measuring, its tracking of how many hours are left, its obsession with how much closer morning is. These are mental habits, not truths, and they can be released. Not because you no longer care about tomorrow, but because you realize that peace never lives there. Peace does not wait at sunrise. Peace lives in the space that has no clock. The timeless now, the breath that's happening without effort, the awareness that doesn't need the sky to change, the presence that is just as full in darkness as it is in light. You may notice how often your mind pushes against night as if it was something to get through, a kind of obstacle, a long hallway to rush down. But the night is not in your way, it's part of the way. It's a teacher, a mirror, a space where craving reveals itself, and when you see that, the urge to push against it begins to fade. There's a deep teaching in Buddhist thought about the three poisons: greed, hatred, and delusion. Craving for morning is a kind of greed, not material greed, but experiential greed. The desire for something different than now. The belief that something else will complete the moment. But the moment needs nothing. It is whole already. When you stop leaning forward into the next hour, you begin to rest even in stillness. Not because anything changes, but because you stopped needing change. You allowed yourself to stop escaping the dark. You stopped making time the enemy. And suddenly, even if you're awake at midnight, you're no longer suffering, because you're no longer waiting. This is the freedom that Buddhist practice points to. Not freedom from experience, but freedom within it. The freedom to be here without needing to be elsewhere. The freedom to sit in night without needing to trade it for day. The freedom to feel what you feel without the story that it should be different. And this freedom starts with seeing how the craving shows up, noticing the way your thoughts reach for the future, watching the moment you check the time, not to learn something, but to escape something. That noticing is powerful because it interrupts the trance, it creates space, And in that space, you can choose presence over projection. You can say, I see you, craving, but I don't need you right now. You can say, morning will come when it comes. I choose to rest here. You can say, this moment, right now, is not missing anything. This shift won't always feel easy, but it will feel honest. And that honesty is what begins to heal the deeper layers of suffering. Because the truth is, rest does not require light. It does not require certainty. It only requires the willingness to stop running, to stop reaching, to stop treating time as a ladder you have to climb to reach peace. You are already here. The only thing missing is the part of your mind that still believes something is missing. And when that belief fades, something beautiful unfolds. The night stops feeling long. It starts feeling wide, spacious, still, enough. You stop needing to rush through it. You stop needing to fix it. You start to trust that you can rest in darkness without waiting for the light. That's not just a shift in thought, it's a shift in being. And that shift rewires the nervous system. It signals safety. It signals presence. It signals that the moment is no longer being postponed. And sleep often arrives naturally after that. Not because you forced it, but because the conditions of rest, peace, stillness, safety, have finally returned. Not from changing the hour, but from changing your relationship to the hour. Even if sleep doesn't come right away, this shift still gives you rest. Because rest is not just physical, it's emotional, it's spiritual. It's the release of needing anything to be different. So tonight, if you feel that craving again, if your thoughts lean toward the morning, if your heart aches for daylight, pause, breathe. Come back to the breath that doesn't care what time it is. Come back to the presence that doesn't measure progress in hours. Come back to the part of you that is already whole, already held, already home. There is no need to fast forward, no need to wait for light to feel okay. No need to count the hours until life feels possible again. Life is here, now, quiet, spacious, timeless. It has always been. Let the night be what it is. Let it wrap around you not as something to escape, but as something to surrender to. Not as a waiting room for morning, but as a sacred space of its own. You are not running out of time. You are returning to where time can't touch you, and in that return, the craving ends, and peace begins. And once the craving for morning has dissolved, once the desire to escape the night is replaced with a steady willingness to be here in the dark with no rush and no resistance, there's something left that continues to whisper through the mind. Even without craving the future, the mind may still wander. It may still spin, exaggerate, repeat, or amplify. Thought by thought, it builds momentum. And in those quiet hours, when there is no outside noise to drown it out, even a small thought can turn into something larger than it is. This is where a new kind of presence must arise, not forceful, not heavy, but clear and awake. This is where sati becomes your ally. Sati, often translated as mindfulness, is more than paying attention. It is the gentle weapon of awareness. Not a weapon of violence, but of precision. A soft, clean blade that slices through confusion without creating conflict. It doesn't attack the thoughts. It doesn't shame the mind. It doesn't force silence. It simply sees things as they are. And that clarity alone dissolves the illusions that cause the spiral. At bedtime, the mind has a habit of escalating. One thought leads to another. A memory becomes a narrative. A small worry turns into an entire imagined future. And the more this continues, the more removed the mind becomes from what is real. It becomes caught in its own echo. Sati does not try to stop this by shutting the mind down. It interrupts gently with clarity. It places a lamp in the room and lets you see, without panic, that none of these thoughts are solid. None of them are as urgent or as large as they appear. Sati begins with simple noticing. You are lying in bed and a thought comes. Noticed. You feel tension in your chest. Noticed. You begin replaying a conversation from earlier. Noticed. Nothing needs to be analyzed or judged. The act of seeing it clearly is enough, because in that moment of clear seeing, the illusion loses its grip. The spiral of thoughts is only possible when they move unchecked. One leads to the next, and the next, until the original spark is forgotten. Mindfulness sees the spark early. It recognizes the moment when a thought begins to build. And instead of being pulled into the story, you remain rooted in awareness. Not cold or detached, but steady. You might say to yourself, "This is just a thought." And with that, the thought falls back into the stillness. Sati is soft, but firm. It doesn't push the thoughts away. It holds them like a mirror. It shows the mind what it is doing without adding judgment. This is why it is called a gentle weapon. It removes the confusion without creating a fight. It removes the darkness by turning on the light. You can begin by anchoring awareness in the breath, not to control it, but to use it as a reference point. The inhale comes, the exhale follows. As thoughts arise, you do not argue, you return, again and again. Each return weakens the pull of the mind's momentum. Each return builds a new pattern, and that pattern becomes your refuge. With practice, the awareness sharpens. You begin to notice more subtle movements. The moment a judgment arises, the instant the mind tries to fix something, the second it leaps into the past or future. Sati sees it all. And with that seeing, the thought no longer grows. It is cut gently at the root. This isn't about being vigilant in a stressful way. It's about being present in a relaxed way, like a candle quietly illuminating a room. It's not loud, it doesn't move, but its presence changes everything. The more you practice, the more sati becomes your default state. The mind still moves, but the awareness around it grows wider, like space holding clouds. The clouds come and go, but the space remains undisturbed. That's the mind on mindfulness. Awake, but not reactive. Alive, but not attached. This presence is especially powerful at night because the absence of stimulation makes the mind's movements more obvious. Without sati, that clarity can lead to restlessness. With sati, it leads to insight. You begin to see what the mind does when it's not given a job, how it tries to create importance, how it clings to identity, how it builds urgency out of silence. And each time you notice this, each time you see the illusion weakens. There's a line in the Buddhist texts that says, With mindfulness, the mind is like a well-trained elephant. Without it, it is like a wild beast. But this isn't meant to scare, it's meant to guide. Because mindfulness doesn't discipline the mind with punishment. It trains it with kindness. It gives it a place to rest. And when the mind is offered rest, it eventually accepts. At night, this rest begins with letting thoughts pass without engagement. You might notice a worry and say, "That's fear trying to protect me." You might see a memory and say, "That's the mind reviewing." You might notice the urge to analyze and say, "That's the habit of control." In each case, mindfulness gives you the ability to respond instead of react, to recognize without absorbing. Over time, this changes the quality of your sleep. Even if you don't fall asleep quickly, you are not suffering in your wakefulness. You are watching, you are breathing, you are resting in awareness. And often, that is enough for the body to let go. There is no need to force yourself into mindfulness. It can begin small. One breath, one moment of noticing, one gentle reminder, "I don't need to follow this thought." And with each moment, the space around the thought grows larger. The urgency fades. The quiet returns. Sati is not a tool to fix you. It is a way to stop believing you are broken. It does not remove thoughts. It removes confusion. It shows the mind its own movements so the heart can rest in truth. And that truth is this: you are not your thoughts. You are not your tension. You are not the stories your mind tells in the dark. You are the awareness behind them, the steady presence that sees without panic, holds without clinging, and softens without trying. Let Sati be your companion tonight, not as a task, but as a friend. Let it guide you back to the breath. Let it show you the space between thoughts. Let it gently cut through the illusions that say, "This moment is not enough." Because it is. It always has been. And with mindfulness, you can finally feel it. Right here, right now, in the silence, in the breath, in the awareness that never leaves. And now that mindfulness has gently sharpened your awareness, now that you can see thoughts without being pulled into them, rest in presence without trying to fix each moment, there comes a deeper opening, not toward more effort, but toward the very mystery at the center of it all. Because even after thoughts are observed, even after breath is followed, something still remains active, a subtle sense of self, trying to succeed at the practice, trying to achieve stillness, trying to finally fall asleep. This next step is not about doing anything more. It is about turning inward to face the quiet paradox at the center of experience itself. Who is trying to sleep? This is not a question to be answered. It's a question designed to pause the machinery of the mind. A Zen koan, a doorway through which logic cannot pass. A mirror so clean that the one looking into it disappears. The moment this question is asked honestly, everything slows. Not because you've figured something out, but because the one who was seeking is suddenly being observed. In Zen, the purpose of a koan is not intellectual. It is not a riddle or a puzzle to solve. It is a kind of spiritual dynamite. A question that collapses the structure of the thinking mind, leaving behind only awareness. And at night, when the mind is spinning, grasping, reaching for sleep like it's a goal to win, this question becomes the softest and most powerful interruption. Who is trying to sleep? The moment the question lands, something pauses. The mind, so eager to provide answers, stumbles, because it cannot define the one asking. It tries to say, me, but then it sees that me is just another thought, just another image, just another echo of memory. And in that pause, in that stillness, the seeking begins to dissolve. This question isn't a trick. It's an invitation to stop taking the self as a solid object, to stop assuming that the one who wants sleep is the one who controls it, because the more the self identifies as the sleeper, the more it judges every moment that doesn't align with that role. Every minute awake becomes failure. Every restless turn becomes another mark against the imagined me. But the koan points deeper. Who is this me? Is it the body, the thoughts, the voice commenting on every sensation, the one remembering yesterday's struggles or planning tomorrow's schedule? Is it the silence that notices all of these? You begin to see that the self isn't one thing. It's a pattern of habits, a bundle of memories, a loop of preferences and fears, and none of it can be found as a solid center. When this is seen, something relaxes. Because if there is no fixed me that must succeed at sleeping, then there is no pressure to do it perfectly. There is just the breath, the moment, the space. Zen masters say that when the koan is held without trying to answer it, the mind eventually gives up. It exhausts itself. Not in frustration, but in release. The seeking stops, the labels fall away, and what's left is the mystery, the stillness that was always underneath. This is where rest is found, not in solving, not in performing, but in letting go of the seeker, the one who was trying to get somewhere, the one who was trying to earn rest, the one who was always almost there but never quite arrived. That self was built on thought, and the koan gently shows that thought cannot grasp what's asking the question. When you lie in bed and ask, "Who is trying to sleep?" really ask it, not to answer, but to explore. The entire structure of effort begins to fall. Because sleep does not come to the one who tries. It comes when trying stops. It arises in the absence of effort, in the space where the doer dissolves. You may notice that when you truly hold the question, the body becomes quieter, not because you told it to, but because tension is held by the one who identifies. And when that identity fades, the tension has no anchor. It softens naturally. The question doesn't have to be repeated endlessly. It can be whispered inwardly once, then followed by silence, a kind of listening, a kind of resting in the unknown. And if thoughts arise again, that's okay. You return, not to an answer, but to the openness the question created. This openness is the point. It's what the mind has been seeking without knowing it. A space where it doesn't have to perform, where it doesn't have to define, where it doesn't have to achieve. Just this, just now, just breath, and the awareness of it all. The more the question is met with sincerity, the more the self begins to loosen. Not in a scary way, not in a disappearing way, but in a softening. The one who was trying to fix everything is no longer in charge, and what remains is simple being, not passive, not blank, but present. Even if thoughts return, even if emotions rise, you meet them with the same question. Who is experiencing this? Who is watching? and again, the mind pauses. The commentary fades, not by force, but by clarity. The koan works not because of effort, but because of space. It removes the need to manage the experience. It removes the belief that the thinker must control the outcome. And in that release, the deepest kind of rest becomes possible. The rest of not needing to be someone. This is what Zen calls effortless effort. The practice that practices itself. You don't need to hold a posture. You don't need to reach a state. You only need to return to the mystery. Let the question remain open. Let it point you back to the presence that never changes, no matter what thought appears. And here, in this space, sleep may come, or it may not. But the suffering around it fades, because the need to succeed is gone. The one who measured everything has stepped aside, and what remains is the quiet presence beneath it all. This presence doesn't need improvement. It doesn't crave the future. It doesn't judge the now. It simply is. And the more you rest in it, the more you realize it has always been here. The thoughts were just covering it. The seeking was just distracting from it. Now you see, the koan was never about sleep. It was about freedom. From the story, from the tension, from the imagined self. And in that freedom, rest flows like water, naturally, silently, without being forced. So tonight, as you lie in stillness, let the question open inside you. Who is trying to sleep? Then listen, not with your ears, with your awareness. Let the silence answer. Let the question dissolve into presence. Let the seeker rest, and let the one who remains, unchanging, unnameable, simply be. And now that the mind has stared into the quiet mirror of the koan, now that the question, who is trying to sleep, has dissolved the illusion of the restless seeker, what remains is a calm, open awareness. But even in this stillness, a subtle echo of the day may linger, not in the form of thoughts chasing the future, but reflections circling the past. The mind may begin to replay the events of the day, not with presence, but with judgment. What went wrong? What should have been different? What wasn't enough? And if left unchecked, that quiet judgment becomes a weight that tightens the body and fogs the mind. But Buddhism offers a different path, the practice of unwrapping the day with compassion instead of critique. This is not a ritual of self-improvement. It's not about measuring success or fixing mistakes. It's a gentle turning inward, a soft review, a way of meeting each moment of the day, especially the messy ones, with curiosity rather than criticism. The intention is not to control the past, but to understand it, to see clearly, to soften the edges, to end the day in peace rather than performance. In the Buddhist tradition, reflection is a powerful tool, not to judge, but to deepen awareness, not to punish, but to recognize where the mind clung, where the heart tightened, where intention slipped. This is not weakness. This is wisdom. It is the humility to see clearly without turning clarity into condemnation. Begin this practice by resting the body. Let yourself lie down or sit comfortably. Let the breath become steady and quiet. Then gently invite the day back, not all at once, but moment by moment. Start with the morning. Ask yourself softly, where was I present? Where did I rush? Where did I speak with care? Where did I react without pause? Notice what arises, but do not grip it. Let it pass like scenery from a moving train. If something painful comes up, meet it with kindness. Say silently, "That was hard. I see it." If something joyful arises, let yourself feel it fully, not to cling, but to acknowledge. Say, "That was beautiful. I remember." The point is not to label good or bad. The point is to witness without adding weight. This witnessing is the key, because most rumination is not caused by the events themselves, but by the mind's interpretation, the way it loops, the way it punishes, the way it declares what should have been. But when you simply see the moment without adding a story, the tension begins to release. The guilt begins to dissolve. The day becomes just what it was, a collection of impermanent experiences, each one a teacher. The more you practice this gentle review, the more your relationship to the past changes. You begin to see that even your most reactive moments were not signs of failure, but signals of pain. That your impatience was rooted in exhaustion, that your forgetfulness came from distraction, not neglect, that your sharp words were echoes of your own unmet needs. This is not about excuses, it's about understanding, and understanding creates space, space for healing, space for rest. Judgment tightens, curiosity loosens. Judgment says, "You failed again." Curiosity says, "What was really happening in that moment?" Judgment says, "You're not good enough." Curiosity says, "What was I needing when I said that?" This shift is powerful because it opens the heart. It ends the habit of internal punishment. It invites the kind of learning that doesn't leave scars. And as you move through the review of your day, notice what your body does. Notice where you tense when certain memories arise. Notice where you soften when others do. This, too, is information. The body stores what the mind won't admit. And when you hold these memories gently, the body begins to let go. You can also include others in this practice, not by speaking, but by silently offering compassion. Think of someone you may have hurt. Say internally, "I acknowledge that moment. May they find peace." Think of someone who helped you. Say, "May they be well. This is not for them, it's for you." To release what you're holding, to offer kindness where the mind might have clung to resentment or guilt. This process is not linear. Some days the review may feel soft and clear. Other days the mind might resist. That's okay. The point is not to succeed. The point is to return. Again and again. With softness, with presence, with the understanding that this moment, right now, is where healing happens. And the more this becomes your habit, the less the past controls your sleep. Because the mind no longer needs to loop endlessly. It has been seen, it has been heard. It has been met with something deeper than thought. Awareness. You begin to fall asleep, not by pushing the day away, but by placing it down gently. Like setting a bundle of leaves by the door, not to ignore, but to let be. And when the body feels that gesture, it responds, it unwinds, it trusts that it's safe now, that nothing is being hidden, that the day has been honored and released. This is the real work of rest, not pretending the day was easy, but meeting it without flinching, without attacking yourself, without making the past heavier than it needs to be. Let this review be like unwrapping a gift. You don't know what's inside each memory, but you open it slowly, carefully, without rushing, and whatever you find, you meet it with the same quiet presence. That's what transforms the night. Not silence, but softness. Not escape, but understanding. Let this be the way you close your day. Not with judgment, but with reverence. Not with blame, but with breath. You don't need to relive the day to release it. You only need to see it clearly, meet it gently, and let it pass. And as it passes, you remain. Not carrying the weight of what happened, but holding the stillness that comes from truth. That stillness is your pillow now. That stillness is your peace. Let it hold you. Let it carry you into rest. Let it teach you, quietly, that nothing about this day needs to be perfect to be complete. And once the day has been unwrapped gently, once its edges have been softened by compassion rather than hardened by criticism, something deeper begins to emerge. The stories that seemed so sharp begin to blur. The highs and lows lose their grip. And in this quiet fading, there is a powerful question waiting to be asked. Not about what happened, but about how much of it actually matters. Because what if the true weight of the day was never in its details? What if its importance was always an illusion? This isn't about pretending nothing matters. It's about seeing clearly where the mind exaggerates the meaning of its daily experiences. The Buddhist path offers a perspective that is both humbling and freeing. Everything that happened today, whether it lifted or broke you, is impermanent. It is already dissolving. And most of what feels urgent now will fade like mist under the sun. When this is seen, sleep becomes easier, not because the events were solved, but because they're no longer clinging to the self. The mind often turns days into identities. A good day becomes proof of progress. A bad day becomes evidence of failure. But in Buddhist thought, this attachment to outcome is the root of suffering. It's the belief that each day's content defines who you are, that you are the argument you had, that you are the missed deadline, that you are the praise you received. This is how the mind builds a prison out of moments that were meant to pass. But every single event of the day, every word spoken, every task completed or delayed, every emotion felt, is just weather. It moves, it shifts. It is not the sky. It is not the foundation of who you are. And when you begin to see your day like clouds passing in a vast sky, something relaxes. You no longer need to hold on. You no longer need to review every detail to protect your identity. This is why clinging to the day creates tension, because the mind believes it must carry every moment forward, that the day was too important to be let go, that sleep must wait until the full analysis is complete. But Buddhist practice invites you to zoom out, to see your life not as a collection of successful or failed days, but as a wide unfolding where no single day carries final meaning. This doesn't mean the day didn't contain meaningful things. It means those things are not fixed, not defining, not eternal. And when you recognize that, you stop using the day to prove something to yourself. You stop using it to reinforce identity. You begin to let the day be what it was: experience, now gone. Even your victories today are not yours to own. They were supported by countless conditions: the weather, the mood, the timing, the help you received. Even your struggles were not entirely yours. They were shaped by old patterns, stress, fatigue, the shifting currents of cause and effect. Buddhism calls this dependent origination, the idea that nothing arises by itself, that every moment is part of a web. When you see this, the need to take everything personally begins to disappear. At night, when you lie down with the pressure of what went wrong or what went too fast, this insight can become your refuge. You can say to yourself, this was just a day, a movement through time, a pattern of sensations and thoughts. I do not need to carry it into the night. This is where sleep becomes a sacred letting go. Not of memory, but of ownership. Not of experience, but of identity. You are not this day. You are not its pain. You are not its praise. You are the space that held it all. And that space is always untouched. This recognition helps the body loosen its grip, because the nervous system responds to what the mind believes. If the day is seen as crucial, then rest becomes a risk. But if the day is seen as a moment already fading, rest becomes natural. The body stops preparing for more action. The mind stops trying to process the unprocessable. And this softening doesn't make you careless. It makes you wise, because you no longer waste your energy preserving the image of a day. You use your energy to be present, to live fully, then release fully. That is the rhythm of life. Inhale, exhale, do, let go. So, when the mind returns to a conversation from earlier, meet it with this awareness. That moment is not here anymore. When it replays something unfinished, meet it with this truth. There is no end to that road. When it amplifies today's importance, meet it with this clarity. The sky is wide, and this was just one cloud. Even the most painful parts of the day begin to lose their sting when seen through this lens. Not because they're denied, but because they're not held so tightly. You begin to see that even regret, even sorrow, even confusion, none of them are permanent. None of them define you. They passed through you, and now they are gone. This teaching allows for a kind of spiritual sleep, not just physical rest, but release at the level of self. You become less of a person trying to hold your life together, and more of a witness watching your life unfold. This is not dissociation. This is clarity. The clarity that nothing needs to be held overnight. Let the day fall behind you like a robe at the door. Let it slip off moment by moment. The email you didn't send. The words you wish you'd said differently. The joy that felt too brief. Let them all return to the river of experience, not rejected, not suppressed, just seen for what they are, passing. And in their passing, what remains? Not a blankness, not a void, but awareness. The part of you that watched the day without becoming it. The part of you that doesn't measure value by success or failure. The part of you that knows how to sleep without explanation. This is what the night is for, not just recovery, but renewal. You let go of the old shape so the new one can form. You let go of who you were at noon so you can meet who you are now. That's the beauty of impermanence. It doesn't erase you, it allows you to begin again. Let this moment be that beginning. Let the breath mark the shift. Let the body feel the release. You are not in control of the next day. You are not responsible for saving this one. You are only asked to rest, to trust, to allow the sky to clear. Because the illusion of the day's importance is heavy, it keeps you in the past, but the truth is light. It reminds you that nothing about today needs to be carried forward unless it teaches peace. Let this be your compass. What brought peace, you can remember. What created tension, you can release. What you learned, you can carry lightly. What you regret, you can meet with compassion. But the need to define yourself by a single day, let that dissolve. The sky has never asked the cloud to stay, and your soul has never asked your mind to keep score. Let everything that no longer needs to be held fall away. Let the night be free of stories. Let your breath be your permission to let go. This is not a conclusion. This is a return to the self that is never shaken by a single moment, to the stillness that does not count the hours, to the awareness that watches days rise and fall without confusion. You are not this day. You never were. You are what remains when the day is done. And that is enough. And now that the weight of the day has been released, now that the stories have been softened, the identity has loosened, and the urgency to define yourself through your waking hours has dissolved, there is one final invitation left: to stop reaching, to stop analyzing, to stop even guiding. Because at the deepest level, rest does not begin in the mind, it begins in the body. And there's something you may have forgotten. The body already knows how to rest. Long before thoughts began to swirl, long before routines and beliefs were built around the struggle of sleep, your body was already tuned to rhythms much older than your thoughts. Breathing, slowing, letting go. These are not techniques to learn. They are instincts. They are memory stored in the cells, in the nervous system, in the quiet intelligence that guides your entire physical being from birth. The issue is never whether the body knows how to rest. It's whether the mind trusts it to do so. When sleep feels hard, the overthinking mind rushes in to manage it. It tries to solve rest like it's a puzzle. It searches for perfect timing, posture, rituals, techniques. It watches the body, measures it, judges it. But this effort becomes tension. This watching becomes interference. Rest is not created by thinking about rest. It's allowed by stepping back and remembering what the body already knows. In Buddhist thought, there is a gentle wisdom in trusting what is natural. The teaching is not to force awakening, but to remove the obstacles that block it. In the same way, your body doesn't need to be taught how to release. It needs permission. It needs the mind to stop interrupting. It needs the space to do what it's always known how to do. Return. Start here, with breath, not controlling it, not counting it, just noticing. Is it short or deep, tight or soft? However it is already trying to care for you. It is already adjusting. The breath is not neutral. It is intelligent. Each inhale and exhale is part of an ancient pattern designed to shift you from alertness into stillness, from effort into ease. This isn't a technique. It's a returning to the body's own rhythm. The nervous system has two states, one for action, one for rest. The body does not need thought to move between them, but thought can interfere. The state of rest, known as parasympathetic activation, is not achieved by thinking your way there. It's allowed when the overthinking stops trying to control what it doesn't need to manage. Let the body show you how to rest. Watch how, when you lie still, the heart begins to slow, the muscles begin to soften, the temperature begins to adjust. There is no command issued. There is no strategy. The body recognizes the signal and begins to shift. The challenge is not teaching the body, but getting out of its way. You can support this process by offering trust rather than fear, by saying inwardly, "You know what to do," by softening the voice that wants to interfere. That voice is not the enemy. It is afraid. It is trying to help. But it is like someone talking loudly in a library. It disrupts the very silence it is trying to protect. You don't have to silence the mind. Just let it tire itself out. Let the body's deeper knowing lead. There is also a hidden belief in many people that rest must be earned, that sleep is a reward. But the body does not believe that. It knows rest is required. It knows it is the foundation of clarity, health, and peace. When you align with this truth, rest becomes simpler. You don't have to achieve anything before lying down. You don't have to prove you are worthy. You are a human body. That is enough. One of the most healing shifts comes when you stop approaching rest as a task, when you stop trying to manage every part of it, when you stop thinking of the body as a stubborn machine and start seeing it as a living intelligence, an ancient forest, a flowing river, something with its own timing, its own rhythm, its own way. And this rhythm is patient. It doesn't need to be hurried. It doesn't need to be perfect. If you've been struggling with sleep, that rhythm has not abandoned you. It's been waiting underneath the tension, waiting for the mind to let go, waiting for the breath to deepen, waiting for you to remember that you are not separate from nature. You can bring attention to places in the body where tension still hides, not to fix them, but to say, "You are safe now." The shoulders, the belly, the jaw, these places often hold stress long after the moment has passed. Let the body know that the moment has passed, that rest is not a risk, that it's okay now to release. This kind of trust in the body changes everything, because it shifts the burden off of the mind. The mind does not need to be in charge of everything. It does not need to watch over sleep like a security guard. It can step down. It can rest too, because the body, soft, grounded, quiet, has it covered. And as you rest in that knowing, the relationship between thought and body begins to change. The mind starts to follow the body's rhythm instead of resisting it. It stops judging the process and starts listening to it. This listening is the beginning of healing, not just for sleep, but for everything. Because sleep is not just the absence of wakefulness, it is the return to something more honest, the part of you that doesn't speak in words, the part that breathes without asking, that heals without trying, that knows what to do even when you don't. This kind of rest isn't always instant, but it's real. And the more you connect with it, the less effort you'll need. The more sleep will come on its own, not as a reward, but as a return to the wisdom you were born with, the rhythm that never left you, the part of you that remembers how to rest even when the world forgets. So tonight, let that be enough. Let the breath carry you back to the body. Let the body carry you back to its wisdom. Trust that rest is not something you must find. It is something already waiting, already moving toward you. You only need to stop moving away. No need to control, no need to guide. Just listen, just soften, just let go of the belief that rest must be created. It only needs to be allowed. The body knows. The body always knew. Let it lead you home. And now that the body has been trusted again, now that rest has been returned to its rightful rhythm, free from interference or control, a new door quietly opens. One that doesn't require waking or logic. One that waits behind the eyes, inside the dark, soft spaces of night. This is where dreams begin to speak. Not as noise, not as meaningless echoes, but as subtle messengers. Not of chaos, but of Dharma. Most people see dreams as accidents of the sleeping brain, random firings, leftover thoughts, exaggerated fears. But from the Buddhist perspective, that is a misunderstanding of what dreams can offer. They are not nonsense. They are not background static. They are symbolic. They are teachings, not always direct, not always clear, but always arising from the same place all insight does, deep within. The dream is not separate from you. It is not something that happens to you. It is you. It is your own mind communicating in symbols instead of sentences. And when it's met with curiosity instead of dismissal, it begins to reveal its meaning. Not like a textbook, but like a mirror. In Buddhist tradition, dreams are often seen as messengers from the subconscious, or more accurately, from the mind below the surface of ordinary awareness. When the conscious mind rests, the deeper layers begin to rise. What's unresolved, what's repressed, what's ignored, it all begins to reshape itself into images, stories, feelings, not to confuse you, but to show you something. This showing isn't always comfortable. A dream might present fear, or loss, or confusion, but it's not punishment. It's reflection. It is the mind's attempt to integrate what's been fragmented, to speak truth in a language that escapes the control of the ego. Because when you're asleep, you're no longer editing, you're no longer performing, you're no longer pushing, and so the messages come through. One of the most important shifts is to stop labeling dreams as just dreams. That phrase becomes a wall. It shuts down inquiry. It says, this is not useful. But what if every dream, even the strange ones, even the uncomfortable ones, carried insight? This doesn't mean turning dreams into prophecies. It means turning toward them with a new kind of listening. Asking, what is this dream showing me about how I feel? What is it showing me about what I avoid? What is it reflecting about my relationships, my beliefs, my fears, my hopes? When you view dreams through the lens of Dharma, they become like nighttime koans, paradoxical, symbolic, sometimes confusing, yet powerful. They do not speak in facts, they speak in metaphors, and that's what makes them effective. They bypass logic, they bypass the surface, they go straight to the heart of what the mind is really processing. In many Buddhist traditions, practitioners are encouraged to pay attention to dreams, not because dreams are more important than waking life, but because they are made of the same mind. What appears in a dream is not less real, it's differently real. It's an expression of the same mental formations that shape your waking perception. Only now, you're seeing them stripped of disguise. This makes dreams powerful allies in understanding karma. Not karma as punishment, but karma as cause and effect. What you carry during the day, the emotions you suppress, the beliefs you carry, these become the seeds that bloom in your sleep. And if you pay attention, those dreams can show you what's still holding on beneath the surface. For example, if anger appears in a dream, the goal isn't to reject it. The question becomes, where is this anger still alive in me? If a fear shows up, you don't need to run from it. You ask, what in my life am I still bracing against? If a peaceful moment arises, let it remind you that joy is still accessible, even when the mind is quiet. Dreams can also reveal attachments, the clinging to outcomes, the fear of letting go, the identity the mind won't release. All of it is present, just dressed in imagery instead of language. And when you greet those images with Buddhist presence, non-judgmental awareness, curiosity, compassion, you begin to learn not just about the dream, but about yourself. This isn't about becoming obsessed with interpretation. It's about allowing dreams to be part of your practice, noticing their themes, seeing their patterns, trusting that what rises in sleep is not random. It's relevant. It may not always be clear, but it always carries something for you, and sometimes dreams offer direct insight. You may find yourself experiencing compassion in a dream in a way that feels more real than waking life. You may cry in a dream and wake up feeling released. You may face something you've been avoiding and wake up with more courage. These are not fantasies. These are teachings, your own mind becoming your teacher. The Buddha himself taught that all things are mind-made, that our experience, waking or dreaming, is shaped by perception, that nothing is outside awareness. This means that the wisdom you're looking for is not somewhere else. It's already speaking, even while you sleep. You don't need to remember every dream. You don't need to record everything. You simply need to shift your relationship with what appears, not dismissing it, not clinging to it, just noticing, with presence, with openness, with the willingness to ask softly, what are you trying to show me? This kind of dream awareness deepens your connection to your own inner world. It makes the night part of your spiritual path. It turns rest into more than recovery. It turns it into reflection. You begin to trust that sleep is not a break from awareness, but an extension of it. And even when the dreams are unclear, even when they seem fragmented or strange, they still offer practice, because they remind you of impermanence. One moment flows into another. The story shifts. The setting dissolves. Just like waking life, the dream shows you how nothing holds, nothing stays. And this insight, repeated night after night, becomes part of your wisdom. Let tonight be a soft return to this truth, that the night is not blank, it's full, that your dreams are not mistakes, they're messengers, that you don't need to force understanding, you just need to be present. And in that presence, the teachings will come, not always clearly, not always comfortably, but always from within, always shaped by what's most true. Because the mind, when left alone to speak, speaks honestly. So rest tonight, knowing that your dreams are not distractions. They are reflections. Trust them. Learn from them. Let them show you what your daytime eyes could not see. They are not random. They are not wrong. They are just another voice in the silence, another mirror in the dark, another step in the path. Listen and learn, even here, even now, even in sleep. And once you've opened your awareness to the subtle wisdom hidden in dreams, once you've begun to see your subconscious not as chaotic, but as deeply instructive, a deeper stillness gently calls to you. Not another technique, not another mental strategy, but a soft invitation to step even closer toward quietness. This next practice is a simple, powerful return, a return to silence itself. It's not silence as emptiness, but silence as sanctuary. This is the noble silence before sleep, the intentional reduction of external stimulation that signals to your body and mind that the day has ended and rest can finally begin. In Buddhist traditions, noble silence is not merely the absence of speech or noise. It is a deliberate and respectful space created to support clarity, insight, and rest. Often practiced during retreats, noble silence is an intentional act of compassion toward oneself and others, offering a reprieve from the constant noise and busyness of daily life. But you don't need a retreat to experience its benefits. Each evening, as you approach sleep, you have the opportunity to enter your own sacred space of silence, a gentle yet profound preparation for rest. The world today is rarely quiet. Technology has connected every waking moment to stimulation, distraction, and information overload. From phones to screens, from conversations to background noise, the modern mind is almost always engaged in external input. And while this connectivity brings benefits, it also has consequences. The nervous system, designed for periods of rest and integration, finds fewer opportunities to settle into its natural rhythms. This constant stimulation creates subtle stress, making effortless rest difficult and deep sleep elusive. But when you cultivate noble silence before bedtime, you're offering your mind and body exactly what they've been craving: a clear, open space to relax. The practice involves gently reducing external stimulation, not just speech, but also screens, entertainment, social media, and even unnecessary reading or conversations. It's a conscious choice to let go of input, creating a boundary between the day's activities and the sanctuary of sleep. This choice is not a restriction, it's an offering, one rooted in deep compassion. By consciously limiting external noise, you give your nervous system permission to unwind without interruption. When external noise subsides, internal chatter gradually follows. Without constant new information, the mind naturally slows down, the body relaxes, and your breath deepens. Noble silence isn't forced. It's a gentle release, a compassionate decision to stop adding fuel to the fires of mental activity. The power of noble silence comes from its simplicity. It doesn't require perfect conditions or prolonged practice. It can begin by dedicating the final hour of your day to quiet reflection and calm presence. This hour becomes a bridge between waking and sleeping, between doing and simply being. As you reduce external input, your internal landscape changes. Thoughts that once shouted become whispers. Concerns become less urgent. Even the body, sensing this shift, naturally follows, releasing accumulated tension from the day's demands. Practicing noble silence involves more than turning off noise. It also invites a change in attitude. It means releasing the compulsion to fill every moment with entertainment or distraction. It means recognizing the discomfort that sometimes arises in stillness without rushing to escape it. Because, paradoxically, this discomfort signals the very tensions noble silence helps you heal. At first, noble silence might feel unfamiliar. The mind may resist, craving stimulation or looking for something to occupy itself. But beneath this resistance is an opportunity to observe your habits and impulses. You may notice how often the mind reaches for distraction when it feels uneasy or bored. You might see clearly the subtle fears or anxieties that arise when stimulation is removed. Noble silence doesn't hide these insights. It gently reveals them, and in that revealing, you have the opportunity for healing. This practice allows you to witness directly how the mind's craving for stimulation often masks deeper emotional needs for connection, security, or peace. When distractions fade, the underlying truth emerges. You might find unexpressed worries, unresolved emotions, or even hidden exhaustion. By allowing these experiences to surface gently, without judgment, noble silence transforms them from sources of tension into pathways for release. Over time, the body and mind begin to associate noble silence with relief and renewal. It becomes a comforting ritual, signaling that it's safe now, safe to let go, safe to soften. The nervous system, recognizing this quiet routine, responds naturally by lowering stress hormones, slowing the heart rate, and easing muscular tension. Gradually, the practice of noble silence becomes embedded in your biological rhythms, effortlessly preparing your body for deep and restorative sleep. This silence is noble precisely because it respects your need for space and healing. It isn't a mere absence of noise, it's the presence of respect. Respect for the body's wisdom, respect for the mind's natural capacity to settle, and respect for the soul's quiet need to reconnect with itself. In noble silence, you are not deprived. You're gently replenished. And as you regularly practice noble silence before sleep, you begin to notice its benefits extending into your waking life. Your mind becomes calmer, clearer, more balanced. Decisions become easier. Emotions become less reactive. You begin to carry the quiet strength of noble silence into your daily interactions, discovering an inner stability that external noise can't disturb. On nights when your mind feels busy, noble silence offers a comforting structure. Instead of endlessly wrestling with anxious thoughts or planning for tomorrow, you simply return to silence. Instead of trying to fix the mind, you gently withdraw the fuel it uses to spin. Overthinking relies on stimulation. Without it, thoughts naturally quiet down. The simplicity of noble silence offers no drama or complexity for the mind to grasp onto, so the internal chatter naturally softens and peace quietly takes its place. Over time, noble silence builds a kind of spiritual muscle, a capacity for stillness and deep listening that stays with you beyond bedtime. It helps you distinguish between real problems and imagined concerns. It teaches you the value of gentle self-awareness. It reminds you that rest isn't something you fight for, but something you allow by simply removing unnecessary obstacles. This practice doesn't require elaborate preparation. Just gently set a boundary around the final hour before bed. Step back from screens. Ease away from unnecessary conversation. Quiet your surroundings